Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Gao Wu. Invincibility begins with basic archery. Chapter 1. It's getting later and later, and it won't be long before night falls, completely covering the entire land. Chenfan stood in the crowd, and like most people, he stood on tiptoes and looked hard at the horizon in the distance. Deep in the wilderness, the roars of ferocious beasts could be heard from time to time. If the hunting team cannot get back to the bunker before it gets completely dark, what they will face is boundless darkness and ferocious beasts that can attack anytime and anywhere. Suddenly, Chenfan felt his arm tighten. He looked down and saw that it was his mother beside him, who was holding his arm with a pale face, her eyes full of helplessness. "Mom, don't worry, Dad and the others will be back soon, right now," he comforted softly. The woman nodded, then raised her head and looked eagerly into the distance. Chenfan glanced around and saw anxiety and panic written on the faces of hundreds of people. He sighed inwardly. He didn't know why, but he just took a nap on the subway. When he woke up, he traveled through time here. Today was the second day after he traveled through time. This world is similar to the previous life. The difference is that 10 years ago, the world changed. The birds and animals, including flowers, plants and trees, have all changed. Not only have they grown in size, but they have also become cruel, bloodthirsty and extremely aggressive. Among humans, there are awakened people. Their mental power is far beyond ordinary people, and they can control wind, rain, thunder and lightning. Some top awakened people are not afraid of thermal weapons and can destroy a town in a previous life with a single blow. Of course, there are a very small number of awakened people. Where they are, cities are gradually forming, attracting survivors. I heard that some large cities have electricity, internet, delicious food, and clean water just like they did 10 years ago. People still take the subway to work from 9 to 5 as they did in the past. After all, resources are limited. The vast majority of ordinary people are not qualified to enter cities, even small cities. They can only form strongholds to protect themselves and resist the vicious beasts. Not to mention electricity, even the most basic life safety cannot be guaranteed. There is a lack of food, medicine, energy, and daily necessities. They walk on the edge of life and death all day long. For example, the original owner of the body couldn't bear the hunger anymore, so he sneaked out, ate unknown fruits in the wild, had a high fever for 3 days, and finally died, letting him take over the body. Could it be that something really happened? He couldn't help clenching his fists. At this moment, excited shouts came from the 7-8-meter-high wooden watchtower nearby. "They're coming, they're coming." "Really? Where is it? Why didn't you see it?" "People can't see far when they stand high, but soon we will be able to see it too." "Great, I'm finally back." The crowd was completely boiling. Looking far into the distance, I could see some small black spots slowly appearing on the horizon, getting closer and closer. Everyone was relieved, and the smiles on their faces became thicker and thicker. However, as the team approached, the smiles on people's faces gradually solidified. I saw a group of more than 10 people, holding bows, arrows and spears, looking embarrassed. Several of them were being helped to walk, and some were carrying people on their backs. Even those who were walking normally had more or less colorful decorations on their bodies. As far as the eye could see, there was no prey. The more astute people discovered that the number of people was still a few short. The team slowly approached and stopped in front of the suspension bridge. The leader had a square face and a stern expression. There were several bloody wounds on his right arm, but at this moment, his face was full of guilt. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. The man licked his chapped lips and whispered, "I'm sorry, this time, we encountered 2 intermediate-level ferocious beasts. They suddenly attacked us. Not only did we lose our original prey, Zuzi, Ahua, Xiaogao and the others." Quote. Before they finished speaking, several people in the crowd felt dizzy and fainted. The crowd suddenly became commotion, and the people around him were busy lifting the fainted person and taking him home. The other people in the hunting team also lowered their heads in shame, not daring to look into the eyes of the old, weak, women and children. Chenfan's body trembled slightly. Dead. 3 of them died at once. It seems that in the memory of the original owner, this was the worst casualty ever. The square-faced man named the leader was the father of the original owner of the body and the leader who led everyone to build this earthen castle. Sparse voices sounded, some sobbing, some sighing, and some speaking to comfort them. The hunting team entered slowly, and the suspension bridge in front of the door was also pulled up. The entire camp was surrounded by a wall more than 3 meters high, making it appear impregnable, giving people a rare sense of security. The wives and children of the injured man were heartbroken when they saw the man being seriously injured, but they were secretly grateful when they thought of the few people who went out with him in the morning but never came back at night. Those who suffered only minor injuries took their families and left. After a while, the sky had completely darkened, and the entire camp was plunged into darkness. They could only see the surroundings clearly with the help of the faint moonlight. "Guodong, your arm." The woman grabbed the square-faced man's right arm and shed 2 lines of tears in her eyes. Chenfan walked over. He had just traveled through time for a few days, and he was still a little uncomfortable with this identity. "I'm fine." Chen Guodong shook his head and blamed himself. "It's all my fault. If I could have discovered those 2 beasts earlier, Zuzi and the others would not, and would not." Snapped. A big, solid hand patted his shoulder, and a bald man comforted him. "Guodong, this is not your fault. If you want to blame it, blame this world. Those of us who survived. Sooner or later there will be such a day. Go back and rest early." He patted the latter's shoulder again, then smiled at the serious-looking Chenfan, and went back with his family. "Dad, go back first," Chenfan said aloud. "My brother is still at home." Chen Guodong was startled and nodded. The entire earthen castle fell into a deathly silence. In the nearby room, the firelight danced, and from time to time there were crackling sounds and feeble conversations. "Mom, I'm hungry. I want to eat more." "Go to sleep. You won't be hungry when you sleep." "But am I really hungry?" "Be obedient. If you eat those things, you will really have nothing to eat." The voice gradually weakened. Chen Guodong's face became more and more guilty. Chenfan caught a glimpse of this scene from the corner of his eye and sighed inwardly. Although his father was taciturn, he was an upright and kind-hearted person. Every time there is prey, it is divided equally among the people in the village, and the old, weak, women and children are raised, so that the family is stretched thin, which makes many people complain. Recently, we have had bad luck and there are very few prey. There is not much food in the entire village, and everyone is suffering from hunger. Winter is coming soon, and if things continue like this, I'm afraid there will really be a tragedy of cannibalism. The 3 of them walked in silence to a house that was lit by fire. "Dad, you're back." In an instant, a little boy of 12 or 13 years old, with a sallow complexion and skinny muscles, ran out of the house quickly and threw himself into Chen Guodong's arms. He was Chen Fan's younger brother, Chen Chen. Chen Chen raised his head, looked around, and then asked with some disappointment, "Dad, did you come back without food this time?" As soon as he finished speaking, his stomach growled. Chen Guodong blushed and hesitated. This time, something unexpected happened. Next time. "But, that's what you said last time." The boy blinked his eyes clear. The woman quickly pulled him away and complained, "Didn't you see that your dad was injured? Be careful to touch the wound." She didn't dare to say that her father almost didn't come back this time. "Ah." The boy followed the woman's gaze and took a step back in fright. "Dad, yes, I'm sorry." "What does this have to do with you?" Chen Guodong touched the boy's head, then looked at the woman and said, "Cook some rice soup. Do you still have money at home? I'll see if I can go to Songjiapu to exchange for some food tomorrow." "It's gone a long time ago. I even exchanged it for the wedding ring you gave me." The woman shook her head, then walked into the house, scooped half a spoonful of rice at the bottom of the jar, and went to make porridge. "There isn't much left in the rice vat. I've calculated that I can still hold on for a week. If I finish all this, I'll really have nothing to eat." "Xiaofan." Chen Guodong waved to Chenfan and asked concernedly, "How is your health?" "It's okay, Dad." Chenfan tried his best to imitate the movements and tone of his original body. In the impression, the original person seems to be a little afraid of his taciturn father, so the relationship is a bit distant, which is a good thing for him. Chen Guodong opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he just nodded and said briefly, "It's okay." Dinner was gruel, mostly water, with just some grains of rice at the bottom of the pot. The family of 4 licked the bottom of the bowl, and Chen Guodong, the mainstay, drank another bowl. Afterwards, they went to have a rest. Chenfan and his younger brother were sleeping in the room on the west side, and the subtle sounds of his parents' conversations could be heard in his ears. It was not that he wanted to eavesdrop. The room was indeed crude and the sound insulation effect was very poor. Guodong, do you know? I am worried to death today, afraid that you will be like them and not come back. The mother sobbed softly. I'll be fine, don't worry. The man's voice was steady and strong. But what about next time? The whole room fell into silence. Chenfan sighed lightly. Don't look at it like this. It's very difficult to live without a meal, but many people don't even have a place to stay. In those cities, let alone whether people are willing to take you in when you go there, just talking about the dangers involved, there are 10 dangers for ordinary people. Life is not enough. Strength, only strong strength can survive. He closed his eyes and thought. Something similar to the character attribute panel in the game appeared in his mind, which was extremely real. Realm, none. Level, 1, 0/1. Physique, 8. The average value for an adult male is 10 points, the same below. Strength, 7. Agility, 7. Spirit, 5. Skills, none. Potential points, 1 point 1 day. In addition, there is a big plus sign behind the level, which is particularly conspicuous. And this plus sign didn't exist an hour ago. He traveled through it last night, and it took about 25 hours tonight. When the data panel first appeared, he thought it was his hallucination. It was not until he confirmed again and again that he finally confirmed that it was his system that had received the account. This plus sign should consume potential points. Chenfan took a deep breath, and his heart moved. He saw that the plus sign at the back seemed to be pressed. Then, a powerful flow of heat surged out from his heart and flowed to every corner of his body. Click, click, a small sound came from all over his body, and there was an indescribable feeling of openness. Is this strengthening my body? This thought popped into Chenfan's mind, and he clearly felt that the power in his body had become stronger. After a few seconds, the heat dissipated. If the sweat from his body hadn't wet his clothes, he would have doubted whether he had just imagined it. When I clenched my fists, I really felt a sense of abundant strength that I didn't have before. That's right, system. He looked quickly and saw that the attributes had indeed changed. Realm, none. Level, 2, 0 halves. Physique, 8.8. Strength, 7.7. Agility, 7.7. Spirit, 5.5. Skills, none. Potential points, 0, 1.1 day. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. His eyes lit up and he saw that all 4 attributes had increased by about 10%, barely reaching the standards of an adult man. No wonder I feel physically stronger. He became more and more excited, feeling that there was a glimmer of hope for his future life. Unfortunately, the potential point became 0 again, and nothing else changed. It seems that it will take another day to get a little more experience points. Chenfan sighed, and the plus sign behind the level also disappeared, and the original 0/1 became 0 halves. It seems that if you want to continue to upgrade your level, you need to consume 2 potential points. I don't know how to increase the growth rate of potential points. 1 point a day. Now I don't even have food to eat. It's a luxury to live another day. Chenfan said to himself that there was not much time left for him. His eyes slowly moved down and landed on the skill column, which was empty. So, is this a reminder to myself to learn martial arts skills? However, I have never heard of anyone in this earthen castle who knows Kung Fu. He himself did remember a few moves of Tai Chi, but he learned them while he was studying. He did them carelessly, but he had long forgotten them after entering the society. Besides, even if there is Tai Chi, in this place where medicine is lacking, you cannot fight with ferocious beasts. Otherwise, if you are injured, you will have to heal yourself. If you are injured too seriously, you will have to wait for death. If you want to learn, it is best to learn archery. The next best thing is to learn long-handled weapons such as iron spears and sticks. Each inch is longer and the other is stronger. Finally, there are swords. Try tomorrow. Chenfan quickly made the decision to learn archery. There were not many iron weapons in the earthen fort, and iron bows were probably even more scarce, because only 2 or 3 of my father and his friends were equipped with longbows, while the others used melee weapons such as spears and shields. As for guns, it was a valuable commodity. Killing low-level ferocious beasts was like a joke, so the price was frighteningly expensive. But it doesn't matter. He can first use wood, combined with broken bow strings, or sinews of fierce beasts, to make a wooden bow. It is not difficult to gather these resources. Even if archery is not a martial art at all, you can still learn to defend yourself and go hunting with a hunting team in the future. After all, relying on others is not the answer, you have to support yourself. Otherwise, you will not be able to survive in this cruel world. As Chenfan thought about it, he gradually felt sleepy and fell asleep. It was not until early in the morning that he was awakened by a scream coming from outside. When Chenfan followed the sound and arrived, he saw that a small house was already crowded with people, and there were constant discussions among the crowd. Why couldn't Xiao Hong let it go and hang herself? Well, her husband didn't come back yesterday. The child died a few years ago. She was left alone. Maybe she thought life was meaningless, so she committed suicide, right? What's the point of this? Yes, in these days, if you don't have enough food to eat, death is also a kind of relief. After saying this, most people fell silent. Yes, it is better to die than to live hard, but death requires courage. Give in, give in. The voice sounded, and two adult men came out carrying a pale, skinny woman's body on a simple stretcher. The woman's tongue sticks out a lot, which is very scary. At least Chenfan was so frightened that his heart beat wildly at the first sight. However, everyone present has become accustomed to it, or in other words, they are all numb. Even children under the age of 10 dared to watch intently. Chen Guodong finally walked out of the room, looking extremely remorseful, because if Juju had not died yesterday, this woman would not have been unable to think about it. His voice was a little hoarse. He first comforted everyone, then looked at the adult men in the crowd and said, "Get ready. We will go hunting in half an hour." Several people looked at each other and nodded. This person has passed away, but the days of the living will continue. When did you come? After the crowd dispersed, Chen Guodong walked up to Chenfan and asked. I just came here not long ago. Chenfan still felt frightened when he thought of the appearance of the corpse just now. Chen Guodong nodded, turned and left. Dad, Chenfan suddenly asked, do you have any extra bows and arrows? I want to learn archery. Chen Guodong turned around, a little surprised. In his impression, this son was a bit autistic and cowardly. Letting him fight the beast would undoubtedly cost his life. Why today? I want to become stronger. Chenfan said from the bottom of his heart, I don't want to starve to death. Chen Guodong's eyes showed a look of relief, although it flashed past. There are bows and arrows. Go to the warehouse and find Uncle Jong. Tell him that I asked you to go there. There are several bows in there. Find the smallest one and give it a try. How many bows? Chenfan was surprised. He thought last night that there were very few iron bows in the camp, otherwise why were there only 2 or 3 people equipped with them? But now, according to his father, there seemed to be quite a few bows and arrows. Chen Guodong glanced at him, as if he saw what he was thinking, and said in a low voice, archery is not as easy to practice as you think, or in other words, it is very difficult to practice. Once you practice it, you can shoot it from 20 or 30 meters away. An arrow can kill ferocious beasts, but if you don't practice well, it is not as good as a knife. After saying that, he turned and left. Chenfan had a bad premonition in his heart. He seemed to have taken it for granted, but the words had already been spoken, so he could only bite the bullet and give it a try. The warehouse is located in the northwest of the camp. There are few people on the road. Apparently, everyone is staying at home quietly in order to conserve heat. When he arrived, he was surprised to find that there were several young people around his age practicing marksmanship in the open space at the door. What he said was that he was actually holding a 2-meter-long spear and stabbing forward. Behind the young man, there was a middle-aged man with a scrawled description. He was walking lamely while correcting the movements of several people, shouting the words, take, and, stab. Chenfan narrowed his eyes slightly and thought to himself, this is probably the Uncle Jong his father mentioned. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Before he could get closer, the lame man turned around and looked him up and down. Together with several young people behind him, they also took this opportunity to stop and look at him curiously. Uncle Jong, my dad is. I know you. An inexplicable smile appeared on the lame man's lips. You are Chen Guodong's son. You almost died from eating fruits in the wild a few days ago, right? Chenfan smiled awkwardly. Are you here to practice shooting too? I want to try bow and arrow first, Chenfan said. Several young people looked at each other, as if there was some kind of tacit understanding among them. Here comes another one. The lame man raised the corners of his mouth and said immediately, come with me. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around sharply, stared at those people and said, still lazy. Sweat more now, and bleed less then, you know. Several young people immediately trembled and practiced their marksmanship again. Chenfan followed the lame man and walked into the back of the house. He was shocked by the dazzling array of weapons. In the spacious space, there were various cold weapons such as swords, guns, swords, halberds, shields, iron axes, and even several earth cannon. The lame man noticed his gaze, raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and said, it's useless without gunpowder. Here, that's the bow you want. Pick one. Chenfan looked to the left and saw several long bows hanging on the wall. From left to right, their sizes gradually became larger. The smallest one was only 1 meter long, and the largest one was nearly 2 meters long, about the same height as a person. He swallowed, looked at the lame man, and said honestly, Uncle Jong, how about I start with the one on the far left first? I guess you are somewhat self-aware. The lame man chuckled, took off the bow, and exerted a little force. He heard a buzz sound, and the bowstring vibrated rapidly, leaving no doubt that if it hit someone's face, the skin would be easily broken. If you want to draw this bow, you need at least 40 pounds of strength. Within 20 steps, you can kill a low-level ferocious beast with one arrow. It's not a big problem. Give it a try. After saying that, he threw the bow over. Chenfan quickly took it, holding the bow with his left hand, taking an arrow with his right hand, aiming it at the target not far away, and slowly pulled out the bowstring. He suddenly felt that it was difficult, and he couldn't help but grit his teeth and used all his strength. Then he fully drew the bowstring and then suddenly released it. Snapped. There was a soft sound and the arrow flew out. Chenfan felt that his whole body was shaking. As for his right arm, he could not lift it up. But at this moment, the attribute panel in his mind changed slightly. Skill. Basic archery, LV0, 1%. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. For a moment, Chenfan had the urge to scream, but luckily he held it back. Unexpectedly, I just picked up the bow and arrow and practiced for a while, and I unlocked a skill, basic archery. Although the level was 0, the progress bar behind it reached 1%. This represents hope, doesn't it? By analogy, if he gets a sword, can he also unlock basic sword skills and basic sword skills? If it's boxing, even be fast-art boxing, maybe you can unlock the basic boxing skills. At this moment, Chenfan felt full of energy. Quote question mark quote. The lame man looked at Chenfan, whose eyes were wide with excitement almost written on his face, and frowned. These days, do young people have such low expectations for themselves? Just draw the most ordinary bow, and you are so happy. The point is, can you just pull it off once? Ahem. The sound of coughing brought Chenfan back to reality. The lame man looked at Chenfan and said in a casual tone, Boy, the bow in your hand is just the most basic one. It is more than 30 meters long. For low-level ferocious beasts, it doesn't have much lethality, besides, you only pulled it off once, so. He pursed his lips outside. Have you seen those people with spears? Chenfan glanced outside, then nodded. When they first came, they started with bow and arrow training. Some even used a second bow, a 60-pound bow, but so what? After 2 or 3 days, they couldn't hold on anymore. As he said that, he glanced at the bow in Chenfan's hand and said, Let me remind you, it is best to practice your marksmanship like them, so that when you encounter ferocious beasts in the wild, you will be able to fight them. Quote. Uncle Jong, thank you for the reminder, but I still want to give it a try. Chenfan looked at the progress bar behind the basic archery skills on the panel and felt filled with the urge to do so. Suit yourself. The lame man was not surprised either. It's like this for all young boys. If you don't hit the south wall, you won't look back. When he pulls the bow a few more times and can no longer lift his entire right arm, he will know the pain. Uncle Jong, can I give those bows a try? Chenfan asked with a smile. He had a doubt, that is, the stronger the bow, the faster the basic archery progress will be. Okay, the lame man said without thinking. The second bow weighs 60 kilograms, the third bow weighs 80 kilograms, the fourth bow weighs 100 kilograms, the fifth bow weighs 200 kilograms, and the sixth bow weighs 300 kilograms. Which one do you want to try? 1. 300 pounds. Chenfan's eyes fell on the black long bow on the far right, which was about the same height as him and weighed 300 kilograms. In other words, if he wanted to pull the bowstring, one arm would have to have at least 300 kilograms of strength. Does this calm you down? The corner of the lame man's mouth raised, not to mention a 300 kilograms, even a 500 kilograms war bow, someone can pull it open and kill an armored rhinoceros with one arrow from 1,000 meters away. Iron-armored rhinoceros, Chenfan murmured to himself. In his memory, this was the top-level existence among the mid-level ferocious beasts. It seemed to be covered with armor. It was said that it could block small-caliber bullets. Uncle Jong, are you the awakened one? He asked subconsciously. After all, in this world, the awakened people are a group of people standing at the top. No, unexpectedly, the lame man shook his head and said, he is a warrior. Musha, Chenfan opened his eyes wide in surprise. There is only one person in 10,000 who can become an awakened person. It is difficult for ordinary people to compete with ferocious beasts except with the help of thermal weapons. The good news is that with the changes in the world, the upper limit of human beings seems to have been broken. The lame man murmured to himself, these people temper their bodies, beat their bones, and have strength beyond ordinary people. These are warriors. There is a person in Jaia Jaaba a few kilometers away from our village who can pull apart this person who weighs 300 pounds with a bow as a warrior. Chenfan took a deep breath, felt a door slowly open in front of him, and asked with some excitement, are there any warriors in our camp? If you are like the person in Jaia Jaaba, there are not, but there are some who are worse, who can draw 100 kilograms of hard bow, just like the Wei brothers. These two can shoot archery and are the main force of the hunting team in the village, but I'm afraid they won't stay here for long. The lame man sighed, his eyebrows filled with sorrow. Then, how do warriors compare with awakened ones? Chenfan continued to ask. Not even close. The lame man looked over and said, the awakened person who has just awakened his superpowers can easily be killed by warriors. But after he can become familiar with the use of superpowers, it will be easy to kill the warriors. Just like the one from Jaia Jaaba who can block it. Bullets. But the awakened ones can. Some powerful awakened ones are not even afraid of weapons of mass destruction and can destroy a town with just a few moves. This is not at the same level at all. Chenfan opened his mouth slightly. The awakened one is so terrifying. He had a vague feeling that his system might be related to martial arts. According to Uncle Jong in front of him, taking the martial arts path was the next best option for ordinary people. The upper limit was very low. Is it really? Okay, why do you have so many problems? The lame man glanced at Chenfan dissatisfied and threw the 60-pound bow on the wall. Try it. Chenfan came to his senses, put down the 40-pound bow, and tried to pull the 60-pound stiff bow. Halfway through, his face turned red and his right arm trembled rapidly. When he pulled it more than halfway, he was really without the strength. I had to give up. This body is still a little weak. The lame man smiled meaningfully. Do you still want to try an 80-pound bow? No, no need. Chenfan smiled bitterly and shook his head, his eyes falling on the remaining bows. If he can't do it now, it doesn't mean he won't do it in the future. After 2 days, if he has accumulated enough potential points, he will be able to draw this 60-pound bow. The same goes for the rest. Then, the lame man asked him to take a pot of arrows and walked out. Arriving at the open space at the door, he set up his bow and nocked an arrow, aiming at the target 20 meters away. He explained the general posture, and then added, when shooting a bow, you must remember the 3 levels. The front hand should be level with the wrist, and the back hand should be level. The elbows should be level, the wrists of the front and back hands should be level, and the elbows should be level with the shoulders. This is the most basic movement. After saying that, there was a whoosh sound, and the arrow was nailed to the earth wall nearby. The lame man looked at Chenfan as if nothing had happened and said, you can practice here today. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me at any time. Yes, Uncle Jong. Chenfan looked at the arrows on the wall and nodded. The lame man turned around and blushed. He was really not good at archery. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here looking at the warehouse. Chenfan took the bow and arrow, stood with his feet shoulder width apart, held the bow in his left hand, and knocked the arrow with his right hand. This was probably the first time he practiced archery in such a formal way, so he was a little nervous. Take a deep breath. Then he slowly drew the bowstring, and at the same time narrowed one eye to ensure that it was in line with the front sight and the aiming point on the target. Gradually, the bowstring was pulled to the maximum, making a squeaking sound. A huge pulling force came from his right shoulder. As time went by, the 3 fingers of his right hand that clasped the string spread quickly, and he heard, whoosh. With a sound, the arrow shot out quickly. As expected, missed the target. Chenfan had already been mentally prepared for this. Only a genius could hit the target right after learning archery. He still had such self-awareness. Besides, that's not what he actually cares about. The next moment, his mind moved, and he saw the attribute panel appearing in front of him. After seeing it clearly, a smile appeared on his face. Basic archery, LV0, 3%. In other words, even though the arrow just missed, it suddenly increased the progress bar by 2%. As long as he comes to level 4 again, he will be promoted to level 1. How long do you think he can last? Taking advantage of the break, several young people gathered together and whispered. I couldn't bear it for 2 days. 2 days, I think 1 day is enough. Haven't you noticed that it has only been less than an hour and he can hardly lift his right hand? To put it bluntly, he will probably have to give up by this afternoon. When you said it, I immediately remembered. I practiced archery for a day. When I went home at night, I couldn't lift the bowl and my fingers were all peeled. Hee, who isn't? In comparison, it is easier to practice shooting. It would be better if you can have a pistol. A young man said with a silly smile. What a wonderful idea you have. The prices of firearms have been driven up to the sky by those unscrupulous businessmen. For such a big bullet, you have to pay several kilograms of grain in exchange for it. How unscrupulous. As a few people chatted, the topic shifted from Chenfan to somewhere else. In fact, Chenfan really feels like he can't bear it now. This body is not as good as a normal person. Every time he pulls Hong full, he almost has to exert all his strength. After pulling Hong for more than 10 times in a row, his whole right arm is shaking, as if it does not belong to him at all. The only advantage is that the proficiency level has increased a lot. Basic archery. LV0, 28%. One of these times, I was only 1 finger away from the bullseye, which suddenly increased my progress by 5%. Chenfan took a deep breath, raised his numb right arm again, and drew the bow string. However, this time, no matter how hard he tried, he could not fully draw the bow string. The next moment, the arrow came out of his hand, flew 3 or 4 meters away, and stuck on the ground. Are you stupid? You don't have enough energy. Don't you know how to take a rest? The lame man's voice sounded. Chenfan turned around and smiled awkwardly at him, and said, Uncle Jong said, I'll take a rest first. As he said that, he sighed. Haste makes waste, although he really wanted to maximize his proficiency, but his physical condition didn't allow it. Come here and I'll press your arm. Just then the lame man said again. At this time, not only Chenfan, but also several young people sitting next to him were stunned. Their eyes seemed to say, when we practice archery, don't we get such treatment? Cut, the lame man said disdainfully to a few people, you call that practicing archery? You are so weak. Those who know it think you are practicing archery, and those who don't know think you are playing cotton. Several people suddenly blushed, although they did have to work hard a few times on the way. But it was because their arms were sore and they couldn't lift them. This, Chenfan said sheepishly, Uncle Jong, don't you need this? If you don't want to go to the toilet later and can't lift your pants, that's fine with me. The lame man shrugged. Chenfan hissed, but still said bravely, then, I'll trouble Uncle Jong. It would have been better if it had been like this earlier. It's a lot of trouble. The lame man limped over and muttered. The words sounded rough, and anyone who wasn't stupid could hear the concern in them. Chenfan stretched out his right arm, and soon he felt a sense of comfort coming over him. The previous fatigue seemed to be swept away, and his body once again regained control of his right arm. It lasted for almost 20 minutes. During the process, Chenfan tried to withdraw his arm several times, but was stopped by the other party's eyes. When the massage was over, Chenfan felt even more embarrassed and said hurriedly, "Uncle Jong, thank you for your hard work." The lame man waved his hand and said, "Compared with what your father did for the people in the village, this little thing is nothing." Chenfan was startled and finally understood. What Uncle Jong is talking about is that his father has always worked hard to ensure that the people in the village, young and old, male and female, can survive, right? Boy, listen to Uncle Jong's advice. This archery technique is not that easy to practice. Even if you can hit the target with perfect accuracy now, in the wild, they are all moving targets and it is difficult to hit. He glanced at the long bow and said seriously, "Uncle Jong, I understand, but if I give up now, wouldn't I give up halfway?" Chenfan looked into the other person's eyes and said calmly, "Finally, the progress bar of basic archery skills is close to 30%. Should I give up at this time and start from scratch? So much energy wasted in vain." 2. The lame man nodded, said, "Practice slowly, take your time," and then turned and left. Of course, the young people on the other side had a hard time. Chenfan looked at the other person's back and thought to himself, "Uncle Jong looks like a rough guy and always talks about shit, but he is a delicate person on the inside. If his leg is not lame, he must be his father. Right-hand man." He sighed softly in his heart, picked up the bow and arrow again, and walked towards the target. Drawing a bow and setting an arrow again and again seems to others to be a very boring thing, and there is no feedback. But for him, every time he shoots an arrow with a standard posture, he can gain a little proficiency. The closer he is to the target, the greater his proficiency will be. This undoubtedly kept him energetic and allowed him to correct his posture while shooting arrows again and again. In this way, the physical fatigue became bearable. "It seems that I underestimated this boy." The lame man glanced at it and nodded slightly. With this spirit of striving to be the best every time, there is no one else in the village. Maybe he can really persevere. Time passed bit by bit, and at noon Chenfan went back to have lunch. Of course, the so-called lunch was no different from last night's dinner, it was still a bowl of gruel. However, after learning that Chenfan was practicing archery, the woman gave him an extra spoonful in the bowl. "Xiaofan, if it's hard, stop practicing now." She looked at Chenfan's red hands and felt heartbroken. Although she was pleased that Chenfan was sensible and willing to share the pressure with her husband, she was even more worried. When the father and son went hunting together, if something happened, how could she survive as a woman with a child? Chenfan smiled and shook his head, bitter. "It's really not bitter, he still enjoys it." He quickly drank the porridge and rushed to practice archery without stopping, leaving behind his mother who looked distressed and his brother who looked confused. "Oh, there's no other way. Time is running out, so we have to race against time." Chenfan sighed. This camp was already very fragile. If there were any more blows, the consequences would be disastrous. However, his experiences in his previous life told him that good fortune and misfortune often come alone, so he must grow up as soon as possible. He walked quickly while looking at the attribute panel. After a morning of practice, his proficiency in basic archery has reached 52%. If nothing else, he will be able to upgrade this skill to level 1 before dark. At that time, there will definitely be some incredible changes. When he arrived at an open space in front of the warehouse, there was no one except the lame man. "Come so early." The lame man was startled. Chenfan smiled in return. The former nodded and said nothing more. Chenfan picked up his bow and arrow, walked to where he stood in the morning, and continued practicing his arrows. The first few times were fine, and he could draw the bow to full capacity, but later it became very difficult. It was not until he couldn't do it with all his strength that he reluctantly put down the bow and took a rest. Seeing this, the lame man came over to massage his right arm as he had done in the morning. "Uncle Jong." Chenfan looked at the other person, feeling very embarrassed. To be honest, without the other person's help in massaging and dredging the qi and blood in the morning, the progress of basic archery skills would never have been so fast. He wanted to say thank you, but when the words came to his lips, they felt too pale. The lame man shook his head slightly and said, "It's nothing. I can see that you are very attentive." Chenfan forced a smile, it was related to his wealth and life, how could he not be careful? After the massage was over, the lame man patted his shoulder, limped up to the young men who had just arrived, and started shouting. It's time for me to continue. Chenfan muttered to himself, stood up from the ground, and continued to practice archery. Time passed bit by bit, and at about 3 or 4 o'clock, a burst of crowd noise was heard from the direction of the entrance to the village. Chenfan looked at him from a distance with a suspicious look on his face. The hunting team is back. At this time, a young man practicing marksmanship shouted excitedly. Yes, it looks like he came back with prey. Prey. Several other people licked their lips subconsciously. What does this mean? This means that every household can get a portion and have meat to eat at night. Seeing this, the lame man sighed softly, waved his hand and said, "Go if you want to. After receiving it, remember to come back immediately." Having said that, he knew that it would be almost dark by the time he finished queuing up to receive the meat. Yes, thank you, Uncle Jong. Several people dropped their weapons and ran away quickly. These little fools. The lame man was cursing behind him. He suspected that the few people who were exhausted just now were just pretending. I see. Chenfan figured out the whole story, but he wasn't as excited as them. Mountains will fall if you rely on them, and everyone will run away if you rely on them. Only when you are strong, you don't have to worry about going hungry. Of course, it would be a great thing for my father and the others to gain something when they go out hunting. You're not going? Asked the lame man, limping over. Uncle Jong, I don't need to go, right? Chenfan moved his right arm and said with a smile, it's you, why don't you go? The lame man laughed at himself and said, people like me can only survive and survive. In other villages, they simply can't stay. He paused for a moment, glanced at the direction in which the young men disappeared, and said, if you go there so early, I'm afraid you'll be disgusted by others. It's not too late to go after a few hours. Chenfan was startled, and then whispered, it's too late to go there, I'm afraid I won't be able to separate the good meat. The lame man glanced at him angrily and said, you kid, you know how to ignore the pot. If you say something like this next time, I won't massage your arms. Chenfan chuckled, I feel like this Uncle Jong is still an interesting person. Another hour passed, and then there was a whoosh sound, and the arrow hit the target without any deviation. At the same time, Chenfan felt a wave of warmth rushing through his body. The previous fatigue was reduced a lot, especially in his right arm, where the feeling was more obvious. After 2 or 3 seconds, this warm current disappeared, giving people a feeling as if it had never appeared. The strength seems to have become a little stronger. Chenfan clenched his right fist and muttered to himself. He was not sure if this was his imagination. By the way, can I see the attribute panel? He was excited and had a thought in his mind. Realm, none. Level, 2.0 halves. Physique, 9.8. Strength, 8.7. Agility, 7.7. Spirit, 5.5. Skill, basic archery. LV1 0% characteristics. Physical strength level 1, arm strength level 1, slow shooting level 1. Potential points. 0, 1.1 day. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Chenfan was shocked and opened his mouth. Unexpectedly, the attribute panel had undergone such a huge change, especially the skill column, which was simply turned upside down. He was not in a hurry, but looked down from above. The physical attributes have been increased a little. The strength attribute has also increased a little. It was indeed not an illusion just now. He exclaimed, if he remembers correctly, his physical attribute was 8.8 before, and his strength attribute was 7.7 points. Now, his physical attribute is 7. No wonder you feel that your previous fatigue has been reduced a lot. The question is, how did these two attribute values increase? The level is still level 2 and has not changed. I'm afraid it's the effect of improving the basic archery skills by 1 level. His eyes glanced at the other 2 attributes below without any change, and finally landed on the basic archery technique. After a day's hard work, the basic archery skills were upgraded from level 0 to level 1. There are features later. What the hell is this feature? What are the effects of the upgrade? He focused on Chang, and suddenly a line of small words appeared in his mind. Strengthen your body. Each time your skill level is improved, your physical attributes will be increased by 1 point. He looked at the person with extraordinary arm strength again. Excellent arm strength. Every time the skill is upgraded by 1 level, the strength attribute will be increased by 1 point. Hiss. Chenfan took a breath of air. He understood everything. The extraordinary arm strength at level 1 adds a little strength attribute to yourself. If you reach level 2, you can add 2 points, and so on. The same goes for the physical strength attribute. Then slow fire, what is it? He muttered, it seems that no other attributes have been increased. Slow fire. Each time the skill is upgraded to a level, the hit probability of archery is increased by 30%. I see. Chenfan's body trembled slightly with excitement. He somewhat understood that these so-called characteristics were like buffs. Some improved physical fitness, some improved strength, and some improved skill effects. Later, there must be some that improved agility and spirit. The most important thing is that these features can be upgraded. Just like the level of basic archery is 1 at this time. If it is upgraded to level 2, these 3 characteristics will be upgraded by 1 level. By then, I will be able to increase a little bit of physical fitness and a little bit of strength. Even without upgrading most of the attributes, it's not much different from an adult man. In addition, the hit rate can also reach 60%. Chenfan took a deep breath, suppressed the ecstasy in his heart, and set a small goal for himself first, to upgrade basic archery to level 3. The hit rate is 90%, close to 100%. If you have this as a basis, it should be enough for you to leave the camp and have some adventures. Indeed, as the lame man expected, even when it was dark, those young people did not come back. Not long ago, the atmosphere in the camp was dull and there was an atmosphere of despair everywhere. Now, laughter and laughter can be heard from everywhere, as well as the smell of cooked meat. Gulu. Chenfan's stomach growled dissatisfiedly. In fact, he was already hungry. The motivation that supported him to draw his bow and arrow again and again was watching the progress bar of basic archery skills increase bit by bit. After reaching level 1, he clearly felt that it was no longer so difficult to fully draw the bow. He was able to shoot 10 arrows in a row before he felt his arms were sore and swollen, but he still had strength left. The bad news is that every time an arrow is shot, the proficiency increase is only less than 0.5%, and even if it hits the bullseye, it is only a little more than 1%. In other words, he has to shoot at least 100 times and still hit the target before he can upgrade basic archery from level 1 to level 2. The difficulty is more than 2 or 3 times that of before. It's okay, just take your time. He thought to himself, it was just 1 or 2 days during the day, what if we included the night? You boy, when you start practicing archery, you really forget about food and sleep. You don't even know it's dark. The lame man's voice sounded. Uncle Jong. Chenfan woke up from his dream, turned to look at him, and scratched his head. The lame man's eyes were soft. This afternoon, he was idle and bored, watching Chenfan practice archery. The more he watched, the more shocked he became. Because he discovered that this boy's archery skills seemed to be improving rapidly. In the morning, it was obvious that he was still a novice, and it took him half a day to adjust his posture. But in the afternoon, his posture was standard, and every 3 or 4 arrows he shot, 1 hit the target. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. This was a beginner. Some of the young people who started practicing archery practiced for 2 days before they hit the bullseye once. After that, they couldn't hit the target again. He tried his best to stay calm and said, "It's getting late. It's time for me to go to the door and have a look. It's time for you to go back. Come back tomorrow morning." The smell of meat wafting in the air also moved his index fingers. Even if he could only get some meat when he went now, it would still be better than nothing. Well, Uncle Jong, go ahead. Chenfan nodded, hesitated, and said, "Uncle Jong, I'll wait for a while. Can you light a torch here and practice for a while?" The lame man's eyes widened, as if he had heard something incredible. Are you going to continue tonight?" He was really shocked. He had seen hard-working people, but never such hard-working people. Not to mention those young people, there is no one in the entire village who is more diligent than this boy. "Yes." Chenfan laughed and said, "I can't sleep when I go home at night. I am idle. Why don't I continue to practice archery?" Uncle Jong, isn't it inconvenient? If it's inconvenient, forget it. He sighed inwardly. The lame man waved his hand and said, there's nothing inconvenient about this. I'll light a torch for you here later. If you want to practice, just keep practicing. Thank you, Uncle Jong. Chenfan was very excited. According to the current progress, by this time tomorrow, the basic archery level should reach level 2. At this moment, a burst of footsteps came from far and near, and the two of them looked at each other at the same time. I saw a middle-aged man walking over with a piece of meat in his hand. Father, Guodong, both of them exclaimed in surprise. Chen Guodong nodded. It could be seen that he was in a good mood today, and there was a rare smile on his usually serious face. Aaron, this is for you. As he spoke, he handed the piece of hind leg meat, which was nearly 2 pounds, to the other party. The lame man's eyes turned red. He looked at the piece of hind leg meat held in Chen Guodong's hand and said movedly, Guodong, why did you send it here directly? And you gave me such good meat. Fine. Chen Guodong waved his hand, the young people in the village must be guided by you. The future of the village will depend on them. You have worked so hard, so you should take this hindquarter. They all know that, and no one has any objections. Hearing this, the lame man slowly stretched out his hand, took the meat, and said, did you get a good harvest today? Yes. Chen Guodong had a big smile on his face, I was lucky today. I caught 2 wasteland rabbits. The big one weighed nearly 50 kilograms. After peeling off the skin, it weighed just over 40 kilograms. The smaller one weighed more than 30 kilograms. Jin, each household in the village is given 1 pound of meat, which is enough. In addition, those who have been contributing to the village will be given more. Good. The lame man also smiled and sighed. I really hope that every day in the future will have such a harvest. Yes. Chen Guodong also nodded. The atmosphere fell into a brief silence, and then his eyes fell on Chenfan and smiled. Xiaofan, come back with me. The meat has been cooked and is waiting for you to go back. Yes, Dad, Chenfan responded. He was also looking forward to it. Bidding farewell to the lame man, the two walked on the uneven dirt road, one behind the other. I heard from your mother that you have been practicing archery all day today. At noon, as soon as you put down the chopsticks, you came here. Chen Guodong asked as he walked forward. Chenfan responded. It was indeed a bit uncomfortable for him to be alone with his father. How do you feel? Feeling okay? Chenfan asked tentatively. It's okay. Chen Guodong nodded and said, if you really want to continue practicing archery, wait until your Uncle Wei and the others are free, and I will ask them to guide you. It is thanks to them that you have gained so much today. Okay. Chenfan nodded. He had heard the lame man mention that the Wei brothers could shoot a bow weighing 100 pounds, so they must have superb shooting skills. It would be of great benefit to get the others' guidance. After Chen Guodong finished speaking, the two fell into silence again. Fortunately, home is right in front of you. Just turn a corner and you'll be there. At this moment, Chenfan narrowed his eyes and saw that in addition to his mother and younger brother, there were 3 or 4 middle-aged men standing or sitting in the main room of his house, obviously waiting for him. Father. Is it too late to celebrate? He thought to himself, and for some reason, he felt an uneasy feeling in his heart. Tiangong, Tianyuan, why are you here? Chen Guodong's eyes showed surprise, and he walked forward quickly and said, you're just in time, haven't you had dinner yet? Why don't you just have it here with me? The woman next to me was shocked, but she still smiled and agreed. Yes, the meal is already ready, everyone is sitting down. After all, today's prey was thanks to the superb archery skills of the Wei brothers. Otherwise, how could a man with 2 legs catch a wasteland rabbit that was good at running? However, several people looked at each other, and finally fell on the tall, middle-aged man who was leading the group. It was Wei Tiangong, the eldest brother of the Wei brothers. Guodong. Wei Tiangong took a deep breath, looked at him and said, a few of us are here tonight to say goodbye to you. Farewell. Chen Guodong's whole body felt like he was struck by lightning. His outstretched hand was hanging in the air. He forced a smile and said with a slightly trembling voice, you're so good, why are you leaving? Is it because you have any objections to the distribution of the previous prey? If we have any opinions, we can talk about it, right? Anyone could hear that he was panicking. The woman held the little boy in her arms and looked at the scene in front of her in panic. Her mind was so blank that she even forgot what she wanted to say to save him. Chenfan was also shocked. He remembered what Uncle Jong had said before, that the Wei brothers would not stay for long. Who would have thought that it would come true so soon? Brother Guodong, it's not what you think. A man who looked somewhat similar to Wei Tiangong but was younger stood up, but he was a little embarrassed to look into Chen Guodong's eyes. We have no objection to the distribution of prey, and you have no objection to Brother Guodong. It was you who inspired everyone to dig deep into the barriers and repel the ferocious beasts. Yeah. The two people behind the two brothers also nodded sharply. Then, why are you leaving? Chen Guodong broke into cold sweat on his forehead. There were not many adult men in the village, but now 4 of them would leave, including the 2 brothers from the Wei family. Once they left, the already poor village would become even worse. Chenfan's heart also rose to his throat. Of course, he doesn't want these people to leave either. Wei Tianyuan glanced at his brother, who nodded slightly. Brother Guodong, then I will tell you the truth. Don't be angry. How come? Chen Guodong forced a smile and said. What he fears most is the choice made after weighing the pros and cons, because it means that he cannot save it. Wei Tianyuan took a deep breath, looked at Chen Guodong and said, because there is no hope if you stay here. After saying this, there seemed to be the sound of something breaking in the room. Brother Guodong, we have a lot of money here. There are only more than 100 people. The adult men are less than 20. Counting a few young boys, the rest are old, weak, women and children. With so many mouths, just a few of us are enough. It's hard to feed. Yes, it is very difficult. Chen Guodong opened his mouth, but we have persisted until today, haven't we? We can continue to persist. What about us? At this time, Wei Tiangong spoke. His eyes were extremely calm. The Zhao brothers from Jaia Jaaba, like us, could only shoot 100-pound hunting bows in the past few years. But in the past few years, with enough ferocious beast meat, they have reached the level of martial arts. In the late stage of body tempering, we can draw a 300-kilogram hard bow. If we have enough food, we can also do it. Chen Guodong was immediately speechless and ashamed. Yes, every time the hunting team catches prey, most of it is due to the Wei brothers. As a result, every time they come back, they can only get a small part. Guodong. As if he realized that he had spoken too harshly, Wei Tiangong sighed and said in a slightly slower tone, listen to my advice, there is no hope of staying here anymore. Why not come with us to Jaia Jaaba, where not only is there plenty of food, but also the living conditions are also much better, and the most important thing is that you can learn some skills to strengthen your body. In this world, only with strength can you survive. Yes, Brother Guodong, come with us. Wei Tianyuan's eyes were full of hope. The 2 brothers had a clear conscience after having paid so much for the village. Now, they should live for themselves and become stronger so that their families no longer live a life of hunger and cold. Chenfan looked at his father, if he guessed correctly. Sure enough, Chen Guodong took a deep breath, his eyes were moist, and he said with a smile in his tears, I understand, Tiangong, going to Jaia Jaaba is indeed the best choice. How can I blame you? All along, if you hadn't been if we pay silently, the village will not last until today. After hearing this, Wei Tiangong and others breathed a sigh of relief. However, I also felt a little guilty in my heart. Brother Guodong, aren't you coming with us? Wei Tianyuan came to his senses and asked hurriedly. No, Chen Guodong smiled slightly, looked at the house not far away, and said, before the village was established, I promised everyone that I would take them to live together. It can be said that this village is the result of everyone's joint efforts. No one can build it. Now, many of them are gone, like Quan, Da Fei, Juju and the others, but their families are still there, and I can't abandon them. Quote. After the words fell, there was deathly silence all around, and the eyes of the men present were all red. Wei Tiangong took a deep breath, his eyes turned red, he reached out and patted the former's shoulder, Brother Guodong, take care. After saying that, he glanced at Chenfan and the others, turned around and left resolutely. Brother Guodong, I'm sorry. Wei Tianyuan bowed and followed quickly. Brother Guodong, let's go, take care. Take care of yourself. The other 2 people looked at him reluctantly, turned and left. Following several figures, they completely disappeared into the darkness, and even the footsteps could not be heard clearly. Chenfan looked at his father, standing there as if he was petrified, with tears welling up in his eyes. Well, he sighed inwardly. Although he could not empathize with her, he could somewhat understand the complex emotions in the latter's heart. Of course, the most important thing is that the situation in the village has become even worse. It is necessary to raise the level of basic archery as soon as possible. Let's eat first, Guodong, the woman said with a pale face. Chen Guodong turned a deaf ear and nodded after a long while. Although the dinner could be called lavish, the atmosphere at the dinner table was terrifyingly quiet. The woman put several pieces of rabbit meat into Chenfan's bowl and said distressedly, "Xiao Fan, you have been practicing archery all day today, please eat more." Yes, the taciturn Chen Guodong also reacted at this moment, picked up a few more pieces of meat, and put them into Chenfan's bowl. The little boy on the side was drooling. There were only 2 pieces in his bowl, which was clearly visible. "Dad, you'd better eat more." Chenfan was a little flattered and hurriedly took the meat back. The other party is the backbone of the family, not to mention that when the Wei brothers leave tomorrow, hunting will be even more difficult. "You go ahead and eat, I have no appetite." Chen Guodong smiled slightly. Chenfan was silent when he saw this. The aroma of the meat in the bowl filled his nostrils. He finally couldn't help it. He took a piece and put it in his mouth to chew. He felt that the aroma was overflowing between his lips and teeth. The meat was only cooked and sprinkled with a little salt, but it was delicious. It has to be able to make people swallow it. At this moment, a piece of information came to mind. Potential point plus 0.1. Quote question mark quote. Chenfan was stunned. Can eating meat also increase potential points? This question came to his mind. He couldn't believe it, and looked at the attribute panel again. It was true, it was originally 0 points, but now it has become 0.1 points. The previous prompt information is still in front of you. An unknown mutation has occurred in this world. After the mutation, animals and plants have evolved and become difficult to deal with. It is reasonable for people to become stronger after eating their meat. He thought to himself, combined with what the Wei brothers said, that the meat of ferocious beasts can indeed improve a person's body. So, after I took the beast meat, it was directly converted into potential points by the system. After reaching a certain number, I can use it to strengthen my body. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it was so. He quickly picked up another piece of meat and put it in his mouth. I have to say that my mother's knife skills are really good. These pieces of meat were all cut into similar sizes. Potential point plus 0.1. The reminder came to mind again. As the pieces of meat were swallowed, the potential points on the panel began to rise rapidly. Watching Chenfan devouring his food, Chen Guodong and the woman looked at each other and smiled knowingly. It can be seen that Xiaofan is really hungry. However, Chen Guodong frowned slightly. Without the Wei brothers, if he wanted to catch the wasteland rabbit, he would probably have to rely on traps. But traps are something that depends on the weather. No more, no less, exactly 10 pieces of meat, which adds 1 point of potential. Chenfan looked at the panel and was very excited. As a result, it would have taken until around 7 or 8 o'clock tomorrow night to save 2 points of potential and upgrade. Now, because of the ferocious beast meat, I can strengthen my body to level 2 tonight. In this way, not only will my strength become stronger, it will also be easier to practice archery tomorrow. No, it's tonight. Xiaofan, aren't you full yet? With a look of care in the woman's eyes, she put the 2 pieces of meat in her bowl into Chenfan's bowl. Chenfan quickly took the meat back, deliberately burped, and said, "Mom, I'm full. You can keep it for yourself." After saying that, without waiting for the woman to say anything, he stood up from the stool, smiled and said to Chen Guodong, "Dad, I'm full. I'll go to Uncle Jong's place and practice archery for a while. Just leave a door for me at night." What? Chen Guodong was startled. Not only him, but also the woman was stunned. Only the little boy still looked confused. "Dad, Uncle Wei and the others are gone. Without archers, hunting will be very difficult in the future. If I can learn archery as soon as possible, I can help you earlier." Chenfan said seriously. Chen Guodong felt a warm current flowing through his body, and he couldn't help but be moved. It's good if you have this heart. Gone. After Chenfan finished speaking, he turned around and disappeared in front of several people in a few steps. This kid seems to have grown up. Chen Guodong looked at the woman and seemed to be talking to himself. The woman looked complicated. She was pleased that Chenfan was sensible and had the courage to take responsibility, but she was also worried that something would happen if Chenfan really went hunting with the team. But she also knew very well that sooner or later, Chenfan would have to go out with the hunting team. It's estimated that there's still an hour left. Chenfan glanced at the panel. Fortunately, he was not in a hurry. As I walked, there was a light in front of me, and I saw a bonfire lit on the ground, and there was a smell, and someone was grilling meat on it. You came. The lame man turned his head, glanced at him calmly, and said, "Would you like something to eat?" "Uncle Jong, if you are serious, then I don't mind eating some," Chenfan said honestly, looking at the roasted rabbit meat that was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. "Forget it, I'm just being polite," the lame man said truthfully, blocking Chenfan's sight with his body, and then pouted at the bow and arrow placed not far away. Chenfan resisted the urge to give him a middle finger, silently walked over and picked up the bow and arrow. Strangely enough, the moment his fingers touched the bow and arrow, a sense of familiarity came to his heart, as if he had immediately entered a state. He walked to where he was during the day and continued to repeat the previous actions. After a while, the lame man finished eating the meat and leaned aside lazily, watching Chenfan's performance. After all, idleness is idleness. Time passed by minute by second. It was actually fine at first. I had just finished eating and was full of energy. However, after shooting more than 10 times, the fatigue of the whole arm during the day was also awakened. It was so sore and swollen that I often finished shooting an arrow. You need to rest for 3 or 4 minutes. So, an hour later, a total of more than 20 arrows were shot. Basic Archery. LV1 Level 11, Extraordinary Arm Strength Level 1, Slow Shooting Level 1. If this continues, it is estimated that we will be able to reach Level 2 at noon tomorrow, provided that the arm can still hold on. Chenfan thought to himself. Boy, how about we call it a night? Behind him, the lame man's voice sounded, "If you keep practicing like this, I'm afraid you won't be able to pick up an arrow tomorrow morning." "I'll practice a little longer." Chenfan smiled at him. "That's up to you." The lame man stood up and patted his butt. To be honest, after watching it for a long time, it was quite boring. "I'm leaving. If the fire is almost out, you can put a few more pieces of wood in. Here, the wood is all there." "Well, I understand, thank you Uncle Jong," Chenfan said hurriedly. The lame man waved his hand, walked into a room, and closed the door. Call. Chenfan slowly exhaled. Rest, he also thought, but time waits for no one. With a thought in his mind, he looked at the attribute panel and suddenly became energetic. Unknowingly, 1 hour had passed and his potential point had reached 2. At the same time, a very eye-catching plus sign appeared behind the original line of small characters called level. Finally, it's time to upgrade. Chenfan felt happy, recalling the feeling of becoming stronger, which was addictive. With a thought in his mind, he added 2 potential points. Suddenly, the familiar feeling appeared again. A powerful heat flowed from the depths of his heart, flowing through his limbs and bones. There was a slight bone tremor all over his body. There was a sound, and the original skin became a little tighter. Soon, the heat disappeared, leaving Chenfan feeling unsatisfied. Realm, none. Level, 3, 0 quarters. Physique, 9.8 plus 0.98. Strength, 8.7 plus 0.87. Agility, 7.7 plus 0.77. Spirit, 5.5 plus 0.55. Potential points, 0, 1.1 day. All attributes have increased by 10%. Now, my physical fitness is very similar to that of an adult man. Chenfan nodded happily. What surprised him even more was that the fatigue in various parts of his body and the soreness and swelling that he felt even if he left his right arm motionless during the previous day were all gone. Null. Not just physically, but mentally as well. I didn't expect that strengthening the body would have such benefits. Realizing this, Chenfan was ecstatic. If used properly, he can act like a robot, practicing archery from morning till night. Of course, there is also, not so good, news, that is, the body's strengthening level. If you want to go from 3 to 4, you need 4 potential points. According to the current potential growth rate of 1 point a day, it would take 4 days to achieve this. If you can eat more cooked lean meat, maybe 2 days will be enough. He murmured to himself, with a wry smile gradually appearing on his face. It is conceivable that even if the hunting team has a good harvest today, the meat they can get is not much. 2 kilograms is very good. Tonight, he ate almost half of it by himself, while his father, who was the mainstay, only ate a few pieces. This was definitely not okay. It's better to upgrade the basic archery level as soon as possible. Don't worry about strengthening your body. After all, my father and his friends are not much stronger than normal people. We can't let them take risks all the time. Thinking of this, Chenfan took a deep breath, pulled out the bowstring, and immediately felt much more relaxed. Needless to say, it must be the benefit of strengthening his body. As soon as he put his finger, there was a whoosh sound, and the arrow hit the bull's eye. He adjusted his breathing, and then continued to shoot the second and third arrows. In the distant wilderness, the roars of unknown ferocious beasts could be heard from time to time. After the roars, they fell into deathly silence. He didn't know how much time had passed, but Chenfan felt sleepy and his arms were sore and swollen. It seems that we can only go here tonight. He yawned and looked at the skill bar. Basic Archery LV1, 76.5%. A little faster than I thought. There was a look of relief on his face. It seemed that if he practiced for another 2 or 3 hours tomorrow morning, Basic Archery would be able to reach level 2. Counting the time in the afternoon and evening, level 3 should be enough, right? If it goes well, he will be able to go out with the hunting team the day after tomorrow. If you can find prey, you can not only survive, but also become stronger. The next day, the night slowly faded, and a touch of fish belly white appeared on the distant horizon. Soon, it was dawn. The entrance to the camp was already crowded with people, most of whom were old, weak, women and children, with yellow faces and skinny muscles. They looked at the group of more than a dozen people outside with complicated eyes. They knew that these people were going to Jaia Jaaba. It was the strongest human gathering place in the area within 100 miles. I heard that there was no shortage of food and clothing, and the people living there were very happy. Of course, not everyone can enter with such generous treatment. Strong adult men can enter with their families. Women under the age of 40 can also enter. Others, such as thin men, the elderly, and children, don't think about it. Now, the Wei brothers will take their families with them. Once they leave, there will be less food in the village. Chen Guodong stood at the front of the crowd with tears in his eyes. If we say goodbye today, we can only meet each other in the wild, and at that time, the two parties are not friends, but competitors. Take care of yourself. He patted Wei Tiangong's shoulder excitedly and glanced at the familiar faces behind him. Take care, Guodong. Wei Tiangong also patted Chen Guodong on the shoulder. Take care, Brother Guodong. Brother Guodong, if you want to come to Jaia Jaaba, we can help you introduce him. Yes, Brother Guodong, we are waiting for you. Chen Guodong shook his head. He would not change the decision he had made. Everyone take care. The family members behind them reluctantly waved goodbye to acquaintances in the crowd. They didn't want to leave unless they had to, but there was no hope of staying. For a moment, there was a loud cry. In the eyes of everyone, Wei Tiangong and his party gradually moved away, turning into a dozen small black spots in the distance, and finally disappeared completely. Brother Wei and the others are leaving. A man with a crew cut said sadly, his eyes full of confusion and worry about the future. Chen Guodong turned around, looked at everyone, cleared his throat, and said, "Everyone, please go back. Everyone else, get ready and go hunting later. Tiangong and the others have left, but I believe that with our strength, and can live well." People were demoralized and left in 2s and 3s. Can we really live well if we live well? When the old, weak, women and children left, the original team of more than a dozen people was suddenly reduced by less than half. Counting Chen Guodong, there were only 8 people left. Ha ha ha. The bald man smiled and said, "Not bad, there are 8 more people." When the others heard this, they all smiled bitterly. Some of them could go to Jaia Jaaba, but they were unwilling to leave at this time because of their relationship with Chen Guodong. "Bald, your tone is quite relaxed," a round-faced man said angrily. once the Wei brothers leave, there will be no archers in the team. It will be difficult to catch prey. The smile on the bald man's face froze, and then he laughed again. Why are you panicking? Just use a trap. Quote. Everyone was speechless. When we get back from the hunt, let's practice our archery skills again. It's really not possible without some long-range attack methods. Chen Guodong couldn't help but sigh, and then his eyes fell on everyone. Then let's go. The lame man limped back from the village gate, and saw a figure in the distance, practicing arrows there. The young man has good legs and feet, so he came back so quickly. He thought secretly, and suddenly, he frowned. Isn't that right? He seemed to be in the crowd just now and didn't see this kid. It seemed like he really didn't see him. He walked over slowly and couldn't help but said, just now, you didn't go to the village gate. Chenfan turned his head, smiled and said, no, I came here directly after breakfast. Quote. The lame man's eyes widened. Uncle Jong is talking about the Wei brothers leaving, right? Chenfan shot another arrow and took advantage of a moment of relaxation to say, they came to see my dad last night, and I was there at the time. My dad went this morning. It doesn't seem to matter whether I go or not. Quote. That's what I said. The lame man nodded. The Wei brothers are determined to leave, no matter who goes. If they want to stay, it will only make both parties more embarrassed. Then his eyes fell on Chenfan again, thinking that this kid seemed a little different. Moreover, seeing that he seems to be addicted to archery and seems to be enjoying it a bit, maybe this boy can really take over the position of the Wei brothers in the hunting team in the village. I think it's quite beautiful. He shook his head. It's too difficult. It's too difficult. It's not something that can be explained clearly in 1 or 2 sentences. You guys, cheer up. He walked to the other side and began to scold several young people. Chenfan couldn't help but laugh, and then he focused on the target. One arrow, another arrow, another arrow. Chapter 11. When it was almost 9 o'clock in the morning, an idea flashed in Chenfan's mind. Not only that, a warm current surged through his body. It was not as good as the heat when the body was strengthened, but it also diluted the previous fatigue a lot. I can feel that my physique and strength are stronger. Finally upgraded to level 2. Chenfan breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the skills column in his mind. Realm, none. Level, 3, 0 quarters. Physique, 11.78. Strength, 10.57. Basic archery, LV2, 0% characteristics. Physical strength level 2, arm strength level 2, slow shooting level 2. It is clear at a glance that the physical strength attributes have increased a bit. Especially the physical attribute, it's almost 12 o'clock. The level 2 slow fire characteristic also means that his hit rate is as high as 60%. I wonder how much proficiency can be gained by shooting an arrow now. With this thought in his mind, he couldn't wait to draw his bow and arrow. This time, it was easier to fully draw the bowstring. Call out. The arrow pierced the air and hit the red heart. Very accurate. The basic archery skills at level 2 have really improved tremendously. Chenfan recalled that when he was shooting arrows, he had no distractions and was very focused. The key is that once he started to draw the bow, his whole body automatically entered this state. The next moment, a wry smile appeared on his face. Basic archery LV2, 0.4%. At level 1, an arrow hitting the bullseye could increase proficiency by about 1.2%. Now, it's only 1/3. In other words, if I want to upgrade my basic archery skills to level 3, I have to hit the target 250 times. My physique and strength have improved now. I guess it won't be a big problem to complete an archery shot in 2 minutes. That's 30 times in an hour. 10 hours should be more than enough. A smile appeared on his face, full of energy again. Time passed bit by bit, and at noon, Chenfan went back to have lunch. The woman felt sorry for his hard work in practicing archery, and added a few pieces of meat to his bowl. The potential point has also increased to 0.3. Although compared to the 4-point experience value of the next level, it is not even 1/10, Chenfan is full of gratitude in his heart. After lunch, he couldn't wait to return to the open space in front of the warehouse and continue practicing archery. As if they were touched, the young men came over soon after and looked at Chenfan with a hint of respect in their eyes. They didn't quite believe what the lame man said. The young man who practiced archery continued to practice archery here at night, but this morning, plus the whole day yesterday, they didn't see Chenfan being lazy. In addition, the Wei brothers have also left, and the village will become more and more difficult in the future. If they find another opportunity to be lazy, they will not be able to pass the test in their hearts. An hour later, the lame man sat on the ground, massaging Chenfan's arms, and said in a complicated tone, "You really have some talent, kid." He could clearly see that out of Chenfan's 10 arrows, at least 6 or 7 would hit the target. If he told him, no one would dare to believe that this kid was a beginner. Chenfan chuckled. It is undeniable that it was mainly due to the system, but he also worked hard. But if you keep practicing like this, it probably won't have much effect. At this moment, the lame man changed the subject and said. Chenfan's body trembled, his pupils dilated unconsciously, and he hurriedly asked, "What do you mean by Uncle Jong?" The lame man raised his head and glanced at him. "I saw that your archery hit rate is very high now. This is a good thing, but have you ever thought that these are immovable targets? Those ferocious beasts in the wild are not stupid. Unless you don't let them find out, otherwise, at their speed." He did not continue speaking, but the meaning was self-evident. Chenfan's mind was agitated. He kept staring at the proficiency progress bar, full of energy, but also trapped in it, without jumping out to look at the problem. "Uncle Jong, you want me to practice shooting at moving targets? Good." The lame man showed a teachable expression. "Although my archery ability is average, I can know the answer to something like this with my butt. Your progress is rapid and worthy of praise, but it is not enough." "I see." Chenfan took a deep breath and then asked, "What about that, so there is a moving target?" Quote. The lame man felt that he had dug a hole for himself. After 2 or 3 seconds of silence, he still gave his answer, "Let me help you." So after a while, several young people saw this scene. The lame man stood aside and threw an arrow target into the air, while Chenfan aimed at the target that was moving parabolically in the air and shot an arrow. Unfortunately, it didn't work. "Don't worry, take your time," the lame man said. "This time, I am going slower, concentrate." After saying that, he threw the arrow target again. Chenfan narrowed his eyes, predicted the trajectory of the target, and shot another arrow. Call out. After hitting the edge of the target shook, flew back, and finally landed on the ground. Chenfan exhaled and looked at the attribute panel impatiently. Basic Archery LV2, 25%. Quote. He was suddenly surprised and delighted. It was only 23% before. In other words, just this arrow directly increased the progress by 2%. This is just the edge of the hit. If it can hit the bullseye, it must not be more than 4%. Even if it is not the bullseye but the edge, the progress is still 2%, and the efficiency is 5 times that of shooting at a fixed target. It is still a huge profit. What are you thinking about? Focus and continue. The lame man's serious voice sounded. Yes, Uncle Jong. Chenfan glanced at him gratefully. According to this progress, let alone improving the basic archery skills to level 3, with a little more effort, level 4 is just around the corner. One thing to say, Uncle Jong is really a good man. An hour later, Uncle Jong finally couldn't hold on anymore. He felt that his right arm weighed 1,000 pounds and he couldn't lift it at all. He wanted to take a rest, but after seeing Chenfan's high-spirited eyes, he changed his mind. Next, I will switch to my left hand. The strength may not be as good as the one I controlled just now. You should be mentally prepared first. Chenfan also woke up from the excitement of soaring proficiency, and apologized hurriedly. Uncle Jong, how about we take a rest first? It won't be too late to practice again after we have rested. Just keep going if I ask you to. Where's all the bullshit coming from? He frowned and said unhappy. But I thought in my heart, how can I, a grown man, lose to a young boy like you? Just like this, throwing targets, shooting arrows, throwing targets, shooting arrows, for almost an hour, the lame man finally couldn't hold on any longer. Uncle Jong, let's take a rest first. Chenfan felt sorry and took the initiative to speak. In almost 2 hours, he hit the target about 12 times. Although he didn't hit the target once, the progress bar exceeded 50%. Physical strength, in fact, does not consume much. The lame man seemed to notice this and asked, "Can you still persist?" Forehead. Chenfan hesitated. "Come here." The lame man looked towards a young man not far away, who was looking up at him. "I see you have been resting for a while and have been staring at this place. Okay, then I'll give you a chance. It's just the right time to take over from me." The young man was about to cry but had no tears. "I just sat down and took a look, okay." After the lame man promised to let him rest for an extra hour later, the short-haired young man ran over in a hurry. "Hello, Brother Fan." He had a smile on his face, nodded and bowed, looking very flattering. Chenfan felt a little embarrassed by the other party's enthusiasm, and both of them were about the same age, so he waved his hands and said, "Don't be so polite, just call me Chenfan. By the way, what's yours?" "Wang Ping, the king who calls himself king, the Ping of the plains." Wang Ping chuckled. "Stop giggling and get started." The lame man said angrily, "You saw what I did just now, just do it." Yes, Uncle Jong, don't worry, I will take care of everything." "Trouble," Chenfan said gratefully. After all, it was taking up other people's time and energy. But if he doesn't do this, his proficiency in basic archery will be much slower to improve. At this critical moment, every minute and every second is particularly precious. "I can only wait until I have mastered basic archery skills and go out hunting to hunt prey before I can be grateful to him again," he said to himself secretly in his heart. "It's okay, no problem." Wang Ping chuckled and said, "Brother Fan, you are Uncle Guodong's son. If Uncle Guodong hadn't taken us in, we would have been killed by ferocious beasts outside. How could we have survived to this day? This is a small thing. Being busy is nothing, ahem." Seemingly noticing that he was talking too much, he stopped hastily, picked up the target, and stood where the lame man had been. "Brother Fan, I'm going to start." Chenfan took a deep breath, nodded, and entered the state. The two were still very unfamiliar with their cooperation at the beginning, but things got better later on, and their proficiency in basic archery steadily increased. Almost more than an hour passed. "Wang Ping, thank you for your hard work." Chenfan saw that the opponent was throwing the arrow target with great effort, and slowly lowered the hand holding the bow and arrow, saying gratefully, "Brother Fan, I'm really sorry." Wang Ping smiled bitterly. He really couldn't hold on any longer. His arms felt like they were filled with lead. When the lame man saw this, he was also ready to take over. Although his arms had recovered somewhat, it was hard to say whether he could last for an hour. "Let me do it." At this moment, the young man who was sitting and resting stood up. He was tall, at least 1.8 meters tall, but very thin, as skinny as a bone. Several people were startled. The same is true for the lame man. He looked at the tall young man and said, "Zhao Feng, your marksmanship is the best among the few. Time and energy are limited, so you should continue to practice your marksmanship." Wang Ping was about to cry but had no tears, so he was called here because his marksmanship was mediocre. "Uncle Jong, it's okay, just think of it as rest." Zhao Feng showed a smile, then looked at Chenfan and said, "Wang Ping is right. Because of Uncle Guodong, my mother and I can live here." When the lame man heard this, he didn't stop him anymore and nodded lightly. Just like that, another 2 or 3 hours passed. During this period, in addition to the lame man, Wang Ping, and Zhao Feng, there were also 1 or 2 young people who took the initiative to come over to help. On the one hand, it was to repay Chen Guodong for taking care of him for so long. On the other hand, they could also see that Chenfan was really talented in practicing archery. The departure of the Wei brothers has greatly reduced the strength of the village. It is necessary to train someone who can shoot arrows as soon as possible. As for those who can use guns, there is really no shortage of 1 or 2. During this period, Chenfan also concluded some rules. It is also aiming at a moving target. The faster the target moves, the more proficiency will be increased after being hit by an arrow, which can be 3%. Of course, if it is too fast, he will not be able to hit it at all. In the same way, if it is too slow, it will be close to a fixed target, and the proficiency gained after hitting it will not be much. Call out. The arrow cut through the air and hit again. In an instant, Chenfan felt a surge of warmth spread all over his body. Most of the previous fatigue disappeared. Has the basic archery been upgraded? He was pleasantly surprised, and at the same time, a strange feeling surged into his heart. Coming. The lame man shouted loudly and threw the target again. Chenfan narrowed his eyes. This time, he felt that the parabolic arrow target not far away was like a slow motion in a movie, more than twice as slow. How is this going? He was filled with doubts, but the movements of his hands were not slow. In other words, it was simply muscle memory. He fully drew the bowstring and shot the arrow. Boom! There was a soft sound, and the arrow hit the bullseye without any deviation. Pretty. Such a clean and sharp arrow, the lame man couldn't help but applaud. Then he seemed to come to his senses, put away his smile, and snorted coldly, "You may be lucky this time, and the blind cat will encounter a dead mouse." Chenfan chuckled. At this time, he has seen that basic archery has indeed been upgraded, and a fourth feature has been unlocked. Level 3.0 Physique 12.78. Strength 11.57. Basic archery. LV3 1% characteristics. Physical strength level 3, arm strength level 3, slow shooting level 3, mounted shooting level 1. Mounted archery. Every time you upgrade to a level, when aiming at a moving target, the hit rate will be increased by 30%. No wonder. He suddenly realized that no wonder he felt that the previous arrow target fell much slower. It turned out to be the result of the characteristics of mounted shooting. Not only that, the first three characteristics, as he expected, have all reached level 3, especially the slow fire characteristic. When aiming at immobile objects, the hit rate is as high as 100. This kind of strength should be enough to support me when I go hunting, right? He secretly thought. Indeed, if basic archery can be upgraded to level 5, the riding and archery characteristics can reach level 3, and the hit rate will be the highest. But he also noticed that although the arrow just hit the target, it only increased his proficiency by 1%. He had to hit the target 100 times while moving to reach LV4. From LV4 to LV5, it will be more difficult. 2 days, at least 2 days. Not much time left. On the second day after traveling back in time, the scene of 3 people dying in the village all at once was still vivid in my mind. If we delay for another day, maybe one more person in the hunting team will die. Who knows, could it be his father? Moreover, he also needs enough ferocious beast meat to convert into potential points to strengthen his body. Although it is risky, if you want to survive, how can you not take risks? Just like the adult men in the village, their physical fitness is not much better than his, but they still go out hunting every day. Of course, if you can upgrade basic archery from LV3 to LV4 from the afternoon to the night, both safety and the certainty of catching prey will be greatly improved. What are you thinking about? At this moment, the displeased voice of the lame man sounded, "Are you distracted at this time?" "Uncle Jong, I'm wondering if I should change to a more lethal bow." Chenfan grinned. The lame man was startled, then looked at him with surprised eyes. "You mean, you want to use that 60-pound bow?" After saying that, a strange look appeared on his face. If there's nothing wrong with his memory, didn't this kid try it yesterday? After struggling for a long time, I couldn't pull it open. Chenfan nodded and said seriously, "Uncle Jong, after these 2 days of practice, I think I might be able to draw that bow now." 2 days ago, his strength attribute was less than 8 points, and he could barely draw a bow weighing 40 kilograms. 2 days later, his strength attribute was close to 12 points, and he could draw a bow weighing 80 kilograms without any problem. But this was too scary, and if he really had to use an 80-pound bow, he would probably be exhausted after a few pulls. 60-pound bow was just right. The lame man was dubious, but nodded and said, "Then come with me." Chenfan followed with a smile. He wants to use a 60-pound bow. The conversation between the two people also reached the ears of Wang Ping and others, causing a burst of discussion. 60 pounds, the difficulty is increased by half. Can Chenfan really do it? Zhao Feng, didn't you draw a 60-pound bow? How does it feel? Several people's eyes fell on the tall figure. Zhao Feng's voice was bitter. It was fine the first few times. When I got to the back, I had to rest for more than 10 minutes before I could pull it apart. At the back, it took more than half an hour. It's too difficult. He shook his head. Since Brother Fan said that, he should be confident, right? Wang Ping said. Should be. I hope he can do it. I heard that he can use a 60-pound bow to kill even if he encounters some intermediate beasts that are not very powerful. There was hope in several people's eyes. In the warehouse, Chenfan took off the 60-pound bow and held the bow. It was heavy and the strings were thicker. At first glance, it seemed to be strenuous. Try it. The lame man glanced at him, but he didn't have any expectations in his heart. He simply felt that this kid was a little swollen and he had to let reality give him a few slaps. Chenfan was a little excited. He picked up an arrow and put it on the string. He held the bow with his left hand and held it in front of him. He pinched the bowstring with his right fingers and pulled it back a little. The lame man went from being careless to shaking his body, and finally opened his mouth wide in shock. Pull away. Is this kid really pulling away? Are you dreaming? Feel good. A smile appeared on Chenfan's face. He loosened his fingers, and the arrow shot out. Uncle Jong, just take this bow. He raised his head and looked at the lame man. Ahem. The lame man showed a hint of embarrassment on his face and said, as long as you can pull it open, this bow has a lethality of about 50 meters, which is similar to the previous bow of 30 meters. If it is 30 meters, it will be more powerful. It should be enough to shoot ordinary low-level ferocious beasts. 50 meters. Chenfan nodded, but in order to ensure the effect, the distance was still a bit far. He raised his head and his eyes fell on the remaining bows, especially the last one. This bow weighed 300 kilograms. He didn't know when he would be able to draw it. But he believes that day won't be too far away. This boy. The lame man on the side saw all his actions. It's quite ambitious, but judging from his performance in the past 2 days, maybe it's really possible. Hanging the 40-pound bow on the wall again, the two walked out of the warehouse one after another. Are you ready? The lame man stood in the same position and looked at Chenfan. Chenfan nodded and subconsciously licked his lips. He also wanted to see if his skill proficiency would increase after switching to a longbow that required more strength. As the target was thrown into the air, that familiar feeling came to my mind again. Call out. The moment the sound of breaking through the air was heard, the arrow pierced the target hard, and the target was hit hard. It fell back several meters in the air before slowly falling to the ground. Good boy. The lame man looked on, amazed in his heart. If this arrow were to hit a person, he would definitely die. Even if it were some armored intermediate ferocious beast, it could pierce in and cause a wound, right? Chenfan hurriedly looked at the system panel, and the smile on his face became even wider. Basic archery. LV3, 4%. In other words, the arrow just shot directly increased the proficiency by 3%. In this way, it is more likely to upgrade basic archery from LV3 to LV4 before setting off tomorrow. For a moment, he wanted to use the 80-pound longbow, but considering the principle of sustainable development, he canceled the plan. The next step is to repeat this process. When the lame man got tired, he switched to Wang Ping. When Wang Ping got tired, he switched to Zhao Feng. When Zhao Feng got tired too, the sky also darkened. There was a movement from the entrance of the camp not far away, but after a while, there was movement. It calmed down, and the people in the village walked back in 2s and 3s. Obviously, the hunting team did not catch any prey today. In the open space, the moods of several people suddenly became heavy. It's only one day, it doesn't matter, but if there are no prey in the next few days. Wang Ping and others looked at each other and did not dare to think about it any further, but they all knew that this possibility was probably the greatest. Okay, it's getting late, you guys go back. The lame man said and looked at Chenfan again and asked, continue in the evening. Continue. Chenfan nodded without thinking. It is much more difficult to hit a moving target at night than during the day, but there is nothing you can do about it. The lame man nodded, indicating that he understood. Wang Ping and the others, you look at me and I look at you. Shall we come in the evening too? Zhao Feng was the first to speak out. Yes, we are also here to practice shooting, and by the way, we can also help Chenfan. Chenfan felt moved in his heart. He did not refuse, but said gratefully, thank you for your hard work. Several people smiled, and some of them were already thinking about whether to go out with the hunting team. Everyone parted briefly, and Chenfan walked towards home. He smelled the aroma of meat and his mother's complaints in the distance. The people in Lijajai are not very reasonable. They are obviously prey that fell into our trap. Why do they take it away when they say it and don't leave a piece of meat for us? They are so overbearing. How can anyone be like this? It's just that we are bullying the small number of people in our village. How come we don't see them being so domineering when the Wei brothers are around? Okay, what happened has happened, it's useless to talk about it now. Chen Guodong's deep voice sounded, his tone was very weak. Inside the room, the woman looked angry, while Chen Guodong sat on the side with a sad face. The little boy looked at this scene at a loss. At this moment, a figure appeared at the door. He immediately ran up excitedly and hugged Chenfan's thigh. Brother, you are back. Chenfan smiled and touched his little head, then looked at his parents in the room and asked curiously, Dad, Mom, what happened? I just heard you mention the word Lijajai outside. Did the people in our village have a conflict with them? Was anyone injured? Quote. Don't worry, no one was hurt. Chen Guodong shook his head. How can it be okay? The woman couldn't help but said. The prey was snatched away by them. These people are simply robbers. Okay, let bygones be bygones. Chen Guodong frowned and signaled to the woman with his eyes that Xiaochen was not sensible, but Xiaofan was different, so letting him listen would only increase his worries. The woman opened her mouth and said, let's eat first. Chenfan frowned. In the middle of his words, no one could accept it. Besides, this matter seems to be quite important. Dad, Mom, what happened? I am also a member of the village, right? Besides, Mom, if you know everything, there should be a lot of people who know about it. I will ask others later. Isn't it the same? The woman looked at Chen Guodong with some resentment. The latter hesitated for a few seconds and finally sighed, okay, then I'll tell you. After listening, don't be impulsive. After listening to his story, Chenfan finally understood what happened. It turned out that my father left the village with the hunting team and went to check the traps everywhere. The harvest was 0. When he saw the last trap, by coincidence, a wildebeest that seemed to be frightened galloped towards them. Come. This kind of horse is nearly 2 meters tall. It is famous for having a single horn on its head. It is the largest among the low-level ferocious beasts. They were overjoyed at first, but then they could only sigh in despair, because the wildebeest in its heyday had no long-range attack methods and could not do anything to the opponent. When the wildebeest saw them, they were naturally very frightened and changed direction. As a result, they fell into the trap they had dug. This was like pie in the sky, and everyone was grinning crookedly. However, Chen Guodong had a bad premonition. The wildebeest was obviously being chased. Perhaps those people were behind it, but they were temporarily thrown away because of their slow speed. The prey must be taken out of the trap as soon as possible. Otherwise, it may cause unnecessary problems. Unfortunately, when they were in the middle of their work, people from Lijajai appeared, and a quarrel broke out between the two parties. The other party believed that he and others had targeted the wildebeest first, and those who wanted to see it had a share. Of course, the people from the village number. However, the people in Lijajai gradually discovered that the number of people on the other side was not only a little small, but the Wei brothers seemed not to be there either. 14 versus 8, almost double. Therefore, Lijajai directly wanted to take away all the meat and refused to leave any meat. In the past, both sides were evenly matched and refused to give in. This wildebeest might be divided into half. But now that the Wei brothers are away and there are only a few people, if there really is a fight, and the other party still has archers, the only one who will suffer is the own village. In the end, not only will there be no prey, but there will also be wounded. In this world, it is self-evident what it means once you are injured. Therefore, the people in the village could only watch helplessly as the other party destroyed the trap and walked away with the prey. Before leaving, they were even annoyed by the Yin and Yang monster. That's what happened. It's my fault. Chen Guodong sighed. He didn't intend to talk about this incident after he came back. It would damage morale. As a result, on the way back, someone in the team was very angry and spoke out, letting many people know about it. People always need to vent, and he understands that. Dad, I think you did the right thing about this. Chenfan nodded. If we had a conflict with them at that time, it would be best if both sides suffered losses. If not, our entire army would be wiped out. Without you, the remaining people in the village will not be able to survive. He sighed inwardly. In this world, we not only have to fight with ferocious beasts, but also with humans. Perhaps, humans are more dangerous than ferocious beasts. Chen Guodong glanced at him a little surprised. He thought that Chenfan would be very excited and yell to fight against those people. The woman on the side also fell silent. She didn't understand this truth, but if she understood it, she would understand that she still had to scold him, even though it was useless. Okay, let's sit down and eat first. You've also practiced all day. Chenfan nodded and sat down around the dining table with his younger brother. Dinner is still the same as yesterday, a bowl of gruel and a plate of sliced meat. Xiaofan, eat more. Chen Guodong picked up a few pieces of meat and was about to put them into Chenfan's bowl, but the latter stopped him with chopsticks. Dad, you can eat it. 1 or 2 pieces will be enough for me. Then, I have one more thing to do with you. You say. Chen Guodong was startled. This was the first time he saw such a serious expression on his son's face. He subconsciously took back his chopsticks and asked, "What's the matter?" "I want to go hunting with the hunting team tomorrow." "What?" Chen Guodong and his wife exclaimed almost at the same time. Then, the woman said decisively, "No. How old are you? Do you know how dangerous it is? What if something happens?" Chen Guodong glanced at his woman, nodded, and said, "Xiaofan, I understand that you want to contribute to the village. You have been practicing archery day and night for the past 2 days, but it's only been a few days. How about this, I'll wait for you practice for another month or 2 and then go out with us." The woman's lips moved and she swallowed the words that came to her mouth. "Brother, please don't go, okay? It's very dangerous outside." His younger brother Chen looked at Chenfan eagerly. Even such a young child knew what it meant to go out. Chenfan shook his head firmly and said directly, "Dad, I have the confidence to say this. After dinner, you come with me to the warehouse. Then you will understand everything. Wait a month or 2. He really doubted whether the village could last for so long. Chen Guodong and the woman looked at each other in confusion. Where does Xiaofan get this confidence? Say something like this. Did he learn archery in just 2 or 3 days? But even if you learn it, it's still just scratching the surface, right? In the end, Chen Guodong nodded. Do you agree or not? It's not too late to decide after reading it. After the family finished dinner, Chenfan took Chen Guodong towards the warehouse. The woman was worried, so she simply took Chen with her, and the family of 4 went out as a group. The lame man saw this scene and showed a dumbfounded expression. What's going on? Not practicing archery. Why bring so many people? Chenfan smiled at him and picked up the 60-pound longbow beside him. At this moment, Chen Guodong narrowed his eyes slightly and showed a solemn look on his face. If he remembered correctly, the bow Xiaofan used for practice yesterday was still the 40-pound bow, right? When did he change to a 60-pound weight? If we say that using a 40-pound bow to hunt low-level ferocious beasts is a bit of a stretch, a 60-pound bow is enough to kill most low-level ferocious beasts, and even some intermediate ferocious beasts can be killed by it. He admitted that Chenfan gave him a little surprise, but it was not enough. At this time, Chenfan had already stood 50 meters away from the target. With his right hand, he took out an arrow from the arrow basket on his back and put it on the string. What? Chen Guodong exclaimed in his heart and widened his eyes. Could it be that he was going to hit the target from such a long distance? Before he could think about it, he just heard a whoosh sound, and a flash of light flashed on the dark arrow tip. It disappeared in a blink of an eye, and he saw the distant target shaking violently. An arrow, impartially, inserted into the target. At the center of the target, a dull crashing sound also reached the ears of everyone present from far to near. Quote exclamation mark quote. In an instant, Chen Guodong's eyes almost popped out of his head. He hit the bullseye 50 meters away. Are you in a dream? The woman on the side also had a look of disbelief on her face. As if nothing had happened, Chenfan calmly stretched out his right hand, took out the second arrow from the arrow basket, and put it on the string. Whoosh! A sound that broke through the sky seemed so clear in the quiet night. Bump! The second arrow also hit the bullseye, right next to the first one. Chen Guodong's mouth opened wide, and his chin almost fell to the ground. Once, it can be said to be a fluke, but twice. Looking at him like this, it seems like he wants to continue. Chenfan remained silent, his face as calm as water. He took out the third arrow, fully pulled the bowstring again, and quickly let go. Bump! 3 hits the bullseye. Then came the fourth and fifth branches. Chen Guodong and his wife, unconsciously, sweat broke out on their foreheads. They were in disbelief at the beginning, then dumbfounded in the middle, and now, they are a little numb. I don't know when, Wang Ping and others also arrived here. Seeing this scene, they all stood there in shock, speechless. Although they could guess that Chenfan's archery skills were definitely good, they didn't expect that he would be good at it. To this point, it's just a perfect shot, right? The lame man stood aside, his mouth twitching twice. Is this guy bringing his family here just to show off? He still got it. At this time, Chenfan turned around with a faint smile on his face. Dad, I should be able to go hunting with you tomorrow, right? After the words fell, the surroundings fell silent again. This time, everyone including the lame man looked shocked. Chen Guodong smiled bitterly. At this point, what else could he say? Even if this level of archery is somewhat different from that of the Wei brothers, considering that Chenfan has only practiced for 2 or 3 days, it is already very difficult. The woman on the side opened her mouth, not knowing what to say. I think we still need to be cautious about this matter. The lame man's voice sounded. He looked at Chenfan solemnly and said, the wilderness is not as dangerous as in the village, and the beasts are no easy targets. You'd better practice your archery skills for a few days before going out. Yeah. Hearing this, the woman quickly agreed. The main reason was that Chenfan was going out as soon as he said it, and she was not mentally prepared at all. Chen Guodong's eyes moved slightly, obviously he also had this intention. Chenfan shook his head and said firmly, Uncle Jong, I understand your good intentions, but you can also hone your archery skills in the wild, right? The lame man was startled and was speechless. Yes, actual combat will always progress faster than daily training, whether it is archery or marksmanship. This is a very simple truth. As for danger, where is it not dangerous? Chenfan said something and looked at Chen Guodong with burning eyes, as if to say, Dad, you should have no reason to refuse now, right? Good. Chen Guodong seemed to have mustered up the courage to say this word. Tomorrow morning, you go out with us. Guodong, the woman exclaimed. Chen Guodong shook his head at her, looked at Chenfan and said, I have to go out tomorrow. Don't practice too late tonight. Go back and rest early. Chenfan showed a smile. On the way back, the woman complained, why did you agree to him? He is not yet an adult. What if something happens to him when he goes out? Chen Guodong sighed, we have to go out. You have seen Xiaofan's archery skills. If we really go out into the wild and can shoot 1 or 2 prey, it will help relieve a lot of pressure on the village. Quote. The woman fell silent for a while, then said after a while. Then you have to ensure his safety. Don't worry, unless I die. Chen Guodong is decisive. Even so, he was not very optimistic in his heart. As Zhong Ren said, ferocious beasts in the wild are not living targets. They will run away when they sense danger, and they do so very fast, making it impossible for ordinary people to catch up. Of course, there are also those who won't run away. These are all synonymous with danger. Xiaofan could hit the bullseye 50 meters away, but in the wild, could he still hit the target when faced with a flying beast? But no matter what, having him join the hunting team can give everyone a lot of confidence. Even if the shot fails, no one will say anything. On the open ground, the lame man's eyes were complicated. Boy, why don't you discuss it with me if you want to go hunting? Chenfan scratched his head and said sheepishly, Uncle Zhong, I also discussed it with my father on a whim at the dinner table, but I haven't had time to discuss it with you yet. You are still too impulsive. The lame man shook his head. Wouldn't it be better to practice for a few more days and become more proficient? Uncle Zhong, we don't have that much time. Chenfan had no choice but to say. Sure enough, the lame man's eyes suddenly darkened. The atmosphere also became solemn. Chenfan didn't like to see people frowning, especially those caused by his own words. He smiled and said, Uncle Zhong, please help me train next time. Just a small favor. After the lame man finished speaking, he limped away and walked away. How could he not see that Chenfan was changing the subject, but he was helpless in the face of the village's predicament. What he did was probably help him during training. 4 or 5 hours passed, and everyone, including the lame man, was exhausted. Even so, no one complained about being tired. They took turns helping Chenfan train his archery skills. Some of them wanted to go out with Chenfan, but they couldn't muster the courage. Along with a dull sound, a warm current flowed throughout the body, and the basic archery technique was upgraded. Chenfan finally felt relieved and thought. Basic archery. LV4, 0% characteristics. Physical strength level 4, arm strength level 4, slow shooting level 4, mounted shooting level 2. Level 2 mounted shooting means that when he aims at a moving target, his hit rate can reach Tianchu village hunting, which adds great combat power. The slow fire reached level 4, which made him a little confused. In this way, when aiming at a fixed target, the hit rate reaches 120%. Is there any significance in the part that exceeds 100%? Aren't they all stable? No, that's not right. He frowned. Perhaps the hit rate was just the theoretical value on the panel, not the actual value after aiming at the prey. The same is true for aiming at an archery target 50 meters away. Compared with windy conditions, it is more difficult to hit when there is wind. What if the wind is very strong? Or the weather is bad, raining or even snowing, which makes it even more difficult. This should be the meaning of the slow fire characteristic. The hit rate exceeds 100% and can continue to improve. The riding and archery characteristic is currently only level 2, but it is conceivable that when the level of basic archery increases, it can reach or even exceed 100% and can even get 200 or 300%. The meaning is probably to aim at a moving target, and the relative speed of the target is different. Relative to the shooter, the slower the target, the easier it is for the shooter to hit the target. If the difference reaches a certain level, it may not be much different from aiming at a fixed target. On the contrary, if the target is faster than the shooter, the harder it will be to hit, so the part of the mounted shooting characteristics that exceeds 100% should be used to make up for this gap. All, in short, the higher the hit rate, the better, there is no doubt about this. Chenfan took another look at the first two characteristics. There was nothing easy to explain about physical strength and arm strength. Naturally, the higher the better. Level 3, 0 quarters. Physique 13.78. Strength 12.57. Agility 8.47. Spirit 6.05. Potential points 0, 1.1 day. The growth rate of potential points is still 1 point per day. Chenfan sighed inwardly, wondering at what speed he could use to make this growth rate higher. Fortunately, he knew that eating the meat of ferocious beasts could gain potential points. That's it for today, thank you for your hard work. He looked at Zhao Feng in the distance and smiled. It's okay, I can continue. Zhao Feng shook his head. That's no need. Chenfan was a little moved, and his eyes swept over several people. Thank you for your hard work tonight, everyone, please go back and rest. He didn't dare to say that he was waiting for the good news from me tomorrow. What if there was no prey, wouldn't it mean that everyone's joy would be in vain? Fortunately, several people didn't care about this, and all looked worried. Brother Fan, if it doesn't work, just wait 2 days before going out. Wang Ping muttered. Yeah. Chenfan smiled, the meaning was self-evident. Then, if you really want to go out, be careful. Yes, Brother Fan, you must come back alive. A thin young man said with an emotional expression. Before he finished speaking, he was patted by Wang Ping. How do you say that? You must come back safe and sound. Yes, I can't speak. Not only can Brother Fan come back tomorrow, but he can also come back with prey. The thin young man said hurriedly, and everyone laughed. Chenfan couldn't help but laugh. Several people left, leaving Chenfan and the lame man alone. When you go out tomorrow, remember to hide behind your father and the others. Don't rely on your ability to shoot arrows to show off as a hero. The lame man repeatedly warned, with your talent, it would be great if you went out a few days later. Well, Uncle Jong, I understand. Chenfan waved his hand pretending to be impatient. That's it, Uncle Jong, I'm going back, you should rest early. This boy. The lame man looked at his handsome back and felt angry. That's all, he sighed and thought to himself, I hope this kid can be safe tomorrow. As for whether he can catch prey, he doesn't have extravagant hopes. Early the next morning, the sky was overcast, as if it was going to rain at any time, but it didn't, which made people feel a little more depressed. Fortunately, the people in the village were not affected by this, because something strange happened at this moment. At the entrance, everyone looked at Chenfan, who was holding a bow in his left hand and carrying an arrow basket on his back, and then at Chen Guodong, who was standing in front of him with a calm expression as always. Guodong, are you going to take him out hunting with you? The bald man touched his bald head and asked with bared teeth. Chen Guodong nodded, looking at his expression. He was not joking. There was a sudden ripple in the crowd. What? Guodong wants to take his son out with him. Isn't it too risky? It's not necessary, it's not necessary. How old is this child? Can he go outside? Guodong, please let him come back. How can we have the nerve to let you do this? An old man burst into tears, his voice trembling. The rest of the hunting team couldn't stand it anymore. Guodong, although we are brothers fighting tigers, and father and son go into battle, are you too sudden? Besides, the speaker glanced at the longbow held by Chenfan. If I read it correctly, this is at the 60-pound longbow in the village. Are you going too far? Yeah, even if we pull this bow, it's quite laborious. How can you let a child use this kind of bow? You can just change it to the 40-pound one. It's too much. Chen Guodong was told that his face turned red and his ears were red. He was a bit mute and couldn't tell the pain of eating Coptis chinensis. Ahem. Chenfan coughed quickly and explained. Uncles, please don't misunderstand me. I took the initiative to go hunting with you this morning. It has nothing to do with my dad. The crowd fell silent. Chen Guodong finally breathed a sigh of relief. Xiao Fan, did he force you to say that? The bald man came over, pointed at Chen Guodong, and said to Chenfan, you have Uncle Lu here to support you, so don't be afraid. Chen Guodong suddenly felt the urge to vomit blood, and stared at the bald man with his eyes. Uncle Lu, it's really not true. I really did it voluntarily. Chenfan was really speechless. Really voluntary. The bald man opened his mouth wide. Okay. Chen Guodong glanced at him and signaled him to shut up quickly, and then looked at everyone. Xiaofan has been practicing archery these past few days, and I just want to take him out to learn more. Don't think too much about it. He didn't mention Chenfan's performance last night, not because he wanted to surprise the hunting team, but because he himself wasn't sure. As the word said, just take Chenfan out to practice and adapt to the wild environment in advance. So, when everyone saw this, they stopped bothering about this topic and asked them to be careful along the way and return safely as usual. The lame man, Wang Ping and the others were also among the crowd, waving vigorously at Chenfan. Amid everyone's worried and expectant eyes, the 9 members of the hunting team slowly left, and finally disappeared. The atmosphere in the village became dull and depressing again, but on the contrary, the atmosphere in the hunting team was a bit joyful. The bald man slapped Chenfan on the shoulder and said carelessly, okay, you boy, you are brave enough to ask to come out with us. Do you know that it is very dangerous outside? Isn't everyone here? Chenfan smiled. Ha ha ha. The others laughed out loud when they heard this. The bald man clicked his tongue twice and said, you're quite smart, don't worry. As he said that, he raised a round shield with a diameter of 1 meter in his hand and said, when you encounter a ferocious beast, stand behind Uncle Lu. Understood, Uncle Lu, if you are really in danger, I will hide behind you as soon as possible. The breeze was blowing, and the air was filled with the smell of earth. Looking around, there was a wilderness surrounded by lush wild grass, as high as the calf. There were also some flowers and plants bearing some unknown wild fruits, which were colorful. This awakened my senses, some bad memories in Chenfan's mind. In addition to weeds, there are also shrubs, which are connected together. Not far away, there are some scattered trees, and there seem to be some tree stumps next to them. This is also easy to understand. If it is close to a human gathering place, it must have been cut down to build houses or serve as trees. Fuel up. Farther away, the outline of the mountain can be vaguely seen. That's the direction of Anshan City. The bald man spoke out. Anshan City. Chenfan cast a curious look at him. It's a small city built on a mountain. It's impregnable. I heard that there are awakened people sitting in it. It's a place that many people dream of. The bald man also had a look of yearning in his eyes. Awakened one. Chenfan nodded. That's no wonder, but one can imagine that it might not be easy to get in. Yes, if you become an awakened person that day, you can go in. Not only can you go in by yourself, but you can also bring your dad and the others in with you, ha ha ha. The bald man joked. Chenfan rolled his eyes at him. Although he had traveled through time not long ago, he still knew some common sense. The earlier the awakened person awakens his powers, the better. The older he is, it cannot be said that it is impossible, but it is very small. In addition, a very important point is that these people have extremely high spiritual attributes. He took a look at his spiritual attributes, and he still had some self-awareness. In this way, everyone was alert to their surroundings while moving forward. The originally joyful atmosphere gradually faded away with the passage of time and physical strength. At this moment, a dark figure appeared not far away. Chen Guodong, who was walking in front, suddenly changed his expression and stretched out his hand to signal everyone to stop. "Is that an armored rhinoceros?" There was an exclamation from the crowd. Chenfan looked at it intently and was shocked. The size was close to that of a large truck, right? "Go around and try not to attract its attention," Chen Guodong whispered. While looking at Chenfan, he explained, "This armored rhinoceros is covered with a layer of armor and has amazing defense. Even among the most ferocious beasts, it is one of the most difficult to deal with, so when encountered to reach it, we'd better take a detour." Chenfan nodded and glanced at the bow and arrow in his hand. He also felt that with this, he might not be able to break the opponent's defense. On the contrary, if the big guy rushed over, it would be like being hit by a large truck. It would be easy to die. The group of people walked in a big circle and breathed a sigh of relief when they could no longer see each other. "It's not just the armored rhino," Chen Guodong added, "and whenever we encounter an intermediate-level ferocious beast, we'd better not disturb them and take a detour. Otherwise, even if we kill it, we will have to pay a high price." Chenfan responded. "The so-called intermediate ferocious beasts are just a rough classification, referring to ferocious beasts that require the combined efforts of several adult men to kill. It's possible to kill someone, but it's impossible without paying the price. It's like hunting that armored rhinoceros. Someone has to go up to it. Otherwise, let alone the chance of output, it's not certain whether the other person can outrun the other person. The person who goes up to him, even if there is a shield to block it, is probably in trouble." Few. Low-level ferocious beasts refer to a class of ferocious beasts that an adult man can defeat while holding a weapon. The range is also very wide. Some may not be aggressive and will only run away when in danger. Some may make people get hurt and even die with others. Actually, it's nothing. You'll get used to it after seeing it more often. The bald man smiled. Others also seemed not surprised. Chenfan also smiled at them and said that he was really nervous just now. "Let's go and check out the first trap first. I hope I can gain something," Chen Guodong said and walked forward. Others followed one after another, and Chenfan was guarded in the center. After walking for about 2 or 3 minutes, Chen Guodong, who was walking in front, paused again and pointed ahead. Everyone looked intently and saw a wasteland rabbit nibbling on grass seeds among the lush grass. It seemed that it didn't notice anyone coming. "That's the wasteland rabbit." The bald man lowered his voice and said, "This guy's eyesight is not good. He can only see clearly things about 10 or 20 meters away. Any further away becomes blurry. This guy's hearing is very good. He can detect any movement 30 or 40 meters away. He's alert." As if to confirm his words, the wasteland rabbit suddenly stood upright, as if it noticed some changes in the surrounding situation. "This rabbit is too big." Chenfan couldn't help but complain. It was as big as the native dog in his previous life. No, it was even bigger because it was very fat and looked chubby. "Give me the arrow," the bald man whispered. Chenfan was stunned and said in surprise, "Uncle Lu, can you still shoot arrows?" "No, but it's time to do it. Who cares, let's treat a dead horse as a living horse." The bald man said carelessly, "What if he was shot? Otherwise, when everyone takes a few steps forward, the rabbit will disappear in a flash." Chen Guodong also looked at Chenfan, with some expectations in his heart, but he didn't dare to expect too much. "Uncle Lu, let me try it," Chenfan couldn't help but said. Also, the bald man was stunned for a moment and nodded. Chenfan held the bow in front of him with his left hand and gently took out an arrow from the arrow basket. At the same time, his heart beat faster than expected. After all, This is my first time hunting in the wild and I have encountered prey. If I can hit it, the food in the village will be available, and I will still have a lot of potential points. But if I can't hit it, it will be a missed opportunity. Chances are, Dad will be disappointed. He tried hard to control himself, but distracting thoughts kept popping up in his mind, so much so that even his right arm holding the arrow was shaking nervously. This scene, in the eyes of others, made them shake their heads secretly. However, this is reasonable. Who doesn't tremble nervously when they go to the wild for the first time? Chen Guodong also sighed in his heart. Okay, just treat it as training for Chenfan. Just practice it a few more times. However, the moment Chenfan put the arrow on the bowstring, all the distracting thoughts in his mind disappeared. He pointed the arrow at the prey and slowly pulled the bowstring. This set of actions seemed to have been practiced thousands of times. As for just relying on muscle memory, it sounds long, but in fact it only takes the blink of an eye. When the bowstring is fully drawn and makes a buzzing sound, the arrow whizzes away with a whoosh sound. The wasteland rabbit seemed to sense danger, its ears trembled, and its hind legs exerted force, trying to kick off the ground. The good news is that it jumped up. The bad news is that an arrow passed through the rabbit's head and was carried flying under the influence of strong inertia. After flying about 3 or 4 meters, it landed on the ground. The wasteland rabbit kicked its hind legs twice and stopped moving. At this moment, Chen Guodong and others were silent, their mouths opened wide, as if they were petrified. After a while, the bald man's voice came out. No, you're not dreaming, are you? Probably, no. There were sounds of swallowing next to him, one after another. Such a big wasteland rabbit fell there, an arrow shot out of its body, and it was completely dead. Chen Guodong's face was also full of shock, but he had seen Chenfan's archery skills last night and was the first one in the crowd to react. The shock on his face was quickly replaced by pride. Someone couldn't help but ran over and picked up the wasteland rabbit. He said with some difficulty, "It's almost time to catch up with the one from yesterday. It weighs at least 40 pounds. Everyone looked away and fell on Chenfan, their eyes filled with disbelief. "Boy, how did you do that?" The bald man couldn't help but ask. "In my impression, only the Wei brothers can do this kind of shooting, right?" Chenfan looked a little embarrassed and scratched his head. "Uncle Lu, I didn't expect to be shot right away. Maybe I was lucky." Luck. Everyone took a look at the arrow. It was passed from the neck. It can be said that it hit the vital point. Can this be explained by luck? You're dishonest, you didn't tell the truth. The bald man looked unbelieving. "Have you practiced secretly?" "I have practiced, but I didn't practice secretly." Chenfan was speechless. "Have you really practiced?" This time everyone was even more shocked and started asking questions. "When did you practice archery? How come we don't know about it at all?" "Yes, Chenfan, you have been practicing this archery technique for at least 2 or 3 years, right? Killing someone with one arrow from such a long distance, my dear, is too fierce. Have you hidden it well enough? You have deceived us all. If you hadn't shown your trick today, we would still have been kept in the dark by you." Lao Lu said before that he should shoot an arrow. "Fortunately, you didn't listen to him, otherwise the rabbit would have run away long ago." The old bald man blushed and touched his bald head. He didn't know that Chenfan's archery skills were so powerful. "Otherwise, I wouldn't have said those few words. Looking back, it's really embarrassing." Chenfan glanced at Chen Guodong, who was not far away. The latter shook his head slightly, so he said vaguely, "I have indeed been practicing for a while. I'll tell you, you're so awesome. You kid, I underestimated you at the gate of the village earlier." Several people were talking and laughing, and it was obvious that they were happy from the bottom of their hearts. Chen Guodong, who had always been taciturn, now had a rare smile on his face. He just shook his head at Chenfan to tell him not to tell the truth. Otherwise, if everyone knew that Chenfan had this kind of archery skills after practicing for 2 or 3 days, who knows how much of a sensation it would cause. As for himself, in addition to being shocked, he is also a little curious. However, there is no shortage of geniuses in this world. Maybe his son is that kind of archery genius. Just like those who are awakened, they are no different from ordinary people before awakening, but once awakened, their strength increases by leaps and bounds, and they can even fly into the sky and escape from the earth. Looking at Chenfan on the other hand, he seems much more normal. Okay, let's move forward, he said. Yeah, everyone woke up as if from a dream. It is indeed gratifying to have a prey, but just one prey is not enough for the village. But no matter what, this is a good start. More importantly, I have seen Chenfan's archery skills. Wouldn't it be great if I encounter a few more wasteland rabbits next? Visible to the naked eye, the atmosphere in the team became heated. Chenfan was still surrounded in the middle, and he was even more protected, giving him the feeling of protecting our shooters in a game. Taking advantage of this time, Chenfan looked at a piece of information that had appeared in his mind before. Add 3 to the experience value. He looked at this line of words and murmured in his heart, experience value. What is this? Could it be that the system rewarded him when he killed the wasteland rabbit? It's very possible, so what's the use? He looked at his attribute panel, and his eyes suddenly widened. Below the potential point, a line of small words appeared again. Experience value, 3. At the same time, there is also a plus sign behind the original basic archery technique, which was not there before. An idea flashed in his mind. Is this experience value used to increase skill proficiency? No, why has your proficiency in basic archery increased? He was a little dazed. If he remembered correctly, he stopped practicing after basic archery reached level 4. His proficiency should have been 0%, but now it suddenly jumped to 3%. You must know that at level 3 of basic archery, the proficiency increased by hitting a fixed target is not even 1%, let alone an astonishing 3%. The amount of information is a bit large. He took a deep breath, organized his thoughts, and finally came to the following conclusion. In actual combat, the increase in skill proficiency is greater or much greater than that of ordinary practice. Kill ferocious beasts to gain experience points. Experience points cannot replace potential points to strengthen the body. It seems that they can be used to improve skill proficiency. The first 2 conclusions have been verified. As for the third conclusion, just experiment. With a thought in his mind, he tried clicking the plus sign. In an instant, the experience value dropped from 3 points to 2 points, and the proficiency increased from 3% to 4%. That's true. Chenfan was breathing rapidly. In this case, there is one more way to increase skill proficiency. Gain experience points by killing ferocious beasts. From what we just saw, the effect of increasing the experience value is a bit low, far less than the improvement in proficiency brought by the shot arrow to basic archery. I think it must be because of the higher level of basic archery. If these few experience points are used to learn other skills in the future, I am afraid it will save a lot of time. Human energy is limited. There is an upper limit to the proficiency you can improve through daily practice. The higher you go, the harder it becomes. Otherwise, there would be no bottleneck. However, as long as you have experience points, it is not a problem. The experience points are enough. You can learn any number of skills. Moreover, the wasteland rabbit is not a big threat among the low-level ferocious beasts. If it is more ferocious or kills the mid-level ferocious beasts, it should have more experience points. Chenfan thought to himself, and couldn't help but think of the armored rhinoceros he encountered before. If he could kill a ferocious beast of this level, it would surely provide a lot of experience points, right? Xiaofan, Xiaofan. At this moment, a low voice sounded in my ears. Chenfan came to his senses and was about to speak. The bald man made a silencing gesture towards him, and then motioned him to look to the southeast. Chenfan looked closely and saw a black, oily mouse about the size of a washbasin. Its upper body poked out of the hole, as if it was checking the environment. This is a low-level ferocious beast called a black rat. It is not aggressive, but it is good at digging holes, making it difficult for people to catch it. Are you sure? The bald man asked. Not only him, the eyes of other people were also focused on him, with deep expectations. Let me try, Chenfan said, taking out the arrow from the arrow basket. He was about to verify again how this experience value came from. Naturally, he couldn't miss this opportunity that came to his door. Of course, the premise was that he had to hit the target. Fortunately, with the experience from the last time, this time, his movements were very steady. When the arrow hit the bowstring, he entered a state of calmness. Call out. The sound of breaking through the sky sounded. Before the black rat could react, a sharp arrow penetrated its head and was nailed to the ground, struggling in vain. It was still a one-shot kill, clean and crisp. Sharp. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. Experience value +1. A piece of information came to mind. Chenfan breathed a sigh of relief. His previous guess was indeed correct. It was indeed possible to gain experience points by killing ferocious beasts, but it was a bit small. He glanced down again and saw that the proficiency of basic archery had increased from 4% to. Good. He nodded secretly, and when he went out to hunt, not only could he obtain prey, but his proficiency would also increase much faster. Someone went over early, brought the black rat back, and said with a smile, "Look at the smooth fur of this thing, and it tastes very delicious. Chenfan, your arrow skills are really accurate." That's right, another arrow shot through the head. Even the Wei brothers don't have such great archery skills. Yeah, everyone agreed. Chenfan smiled, knowing that it was a compliment, but he didn't take it seriously. Okay, let's keep walking. Chen Guodong's voice sounded again, and he looked at Chenfan with a look of relief and joy at the same time. Thanks to bringing Xiao Fan out today, there were 2 prey in less than an hour. It wouldn't have been possible for them. The hunting team moved forward again and encountered several low-level ferocious beasts on the road. Some of them were more wary and jumped away when they heard the noise. Some were a little dazed. People in the team spotted them first and then notified Chenfan. Naturally, Chenfan's arrows were all right, and in less than an hour, he had 3 more prey, 2 black rats, and a wasteland rabbit. Everyone was laughing from ear to ear. This adds up to almost 200 kilograms, right? I've forgotten the last time there was such a rich supply of prey. Yes, it seems that it was that time when we captured a wildebeest. It weighed nearly 300 kilograms, and the whole village ate it for several days. If the people from Lijajai hadn't stolen our prey yesterday, we would have been able to go back with a wildebeest yesterday. As soon as he said this, the atmosphere suddenly became silent. All right, the bald man glanced at the speaker and said, "Don't mention the past. Besides, today's harvest is no worse than yesterday." Yeah, it's not bad. This is all thanks to Chenfan. Everyone tacitly skipped the unpleasant topic. But Chenfan could see the worry in everyone's brows. If, by chance, they meet the people from Lijajai again at this time, will they try to prey on themselves and others again? I'm afraid, yes, you still have to become stronger. Chenfan's previous joy dissipated. Frankly speaking, if he really encountered it now, he could not think of any other way except handing over the prey or breaking the net. Okay, let's stop here today. There are enough prey. Otherwise, it would be bad if the smell of blood attracts those steppenwolves later. Chen Guodong said, Yes, those things are not easy to deal with. There are so many of them, they are the most difficult to deal with. Then just go back. Speaking of which, I really didn't expect to be able to go back so soon. It's like a dream. Ha. Everyone laughed again. Although Chenfan still had some unfinished ideas, he still nodded in agreement. His current physique was stronger than ordinary people, but his strength was limited. The prerequisite for improving his strength was to save his life. Besides, with so much ferocious beast meat, you can have a lot of potential points after you go back. After strengthening your body, you can go out hunting again, and you will get more prey. Let's go. Everyone carried the prey on their backs and embarked on the way back. Chenfan, you did a good job. The bald man gave Chenfan a thumbs up. We all depended on you today. Without you, we would have left empty-handed. Uncle Liu, you are too polite. Chenfan waved his hand. If we hadn't discovered the prey, I really wouldn't have been able to discover them. This is not because he is humble, but because it is a fact. Those ferocious beasts are hidden very cleverly. If you are not an experienced person, you really can't tell. You are really good at talking. The bald man laughed. The men around him also laughed. They were a little worried that Chenfan was too distracted to take them seriously. Now it seems that he was overly concerned. Everyone was talking and laughing for about half an hour when a figure appeared not far away. It's a wildebeest, the sharp-eyed man shouted. Is that the wildebeest? Chenfan looked around and saw a tall unicorn horse more than 30 meters away. It raised its head and seemed to be looking at him and others. It saw us, someone said. Nonsense, I saw him staring at us. This beast is really brave. He knows we can't catch him and won't run away when he sees us. Haha, when we get close, it runs away. The people in the team spoke to each other in a more or less helpless tone. How about shooting it with an arrow? Chenfan couldn't hold back his hands and said eagerly. He didn't have high expectations. Anyway, if he didn't hit, he wouldn't lose anything. If he hit, he would gain blood. Then try it. Xiaofan is up to you. Everyone suddenly became excited. Chenfan took a deep breath, took out the arrow from the arrow basket, put it on the string, aimed at the head of the wildebeest, and suddenly released his fingers. Call out. The arrow pierced the air and whizzed towards it. Just when it was about to hit, the wildebeest turned around and dodged. Just a little bit. This beast's reaction is too fast. It is indeed the fastest among the low-level ferocious beasts. Seeing this scene, even Chen Guodong gritted his teeth and sighed. They could see that if the wildebeest reacted a little slower, the arrow would definitely fall to the ground, but it was just a little short of that. Now the wildebeest reacted, turned around and accelerated, fearing that with just a few blinks, they would be far away. However, at this moment, there was a sound of breaking through the air again, and something flashed away. The accelerating wildebeest suddenly staggered, took a step forward, fell to the ground, and let out a mournful cry. Varied, the bald man exclaimed. Before he could even say, "What?" the third arrow came one after another, piercing the wildebeest's belly and pinning it to the ground. At this time, the wildebeest finally became quiet. Ha! Ha! Chenfan panted heavily, his heart beating wildly. In a few seconds, he shot 3 arrows in a row, which was a huge drain on him now, both mentally and physically. Fortunately, it worked. Looking at the huge size of the wildebeest in the distance, Chenfan felt deeply grateful. He also didn't expect that the wildebeest reacted so quickly and nimbly dodged the first arrow. Now that he thought about it, it made sense. This guy had been staring at his group. Especially when I pointed the arrow at it, I clearly felt that its attention fell on me. Fortunately, I upgraded the basic archery level to level 4 last night, and the riding and shooting characteristics were level 2. Otherwise, with a 30% hit rate, it would be really difficult to hit the second arrow. The third arrow is a last hit shot, but it's a bit redundant. Add 9 experience points. A message came to mind. Chenfan had a look of surprise on his face. He didn't expect that the experience points provided by killing the wildebeest would be so much. Combined with the previous black rats and wasteland rabbits, I think the range of experience points gained after killing low-level ferocious beasts is only 1. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit different. His eyes moved down and landed on basic archery. He was surprised to see that the proficiency bar had risen to 30%. In other words, those 3 arrows just increased the proficiency by 15%. Whether aiming at a fixed or moving target, proficiency grows fastest in actual combat. He sighed inwardly. At this moment, everyone around him also reacted one after another. I read that correctly? The wildebeest was shot. Ying, you must have read it correctly, right? The arrow on its neck directly killed it. So, Xiaofan shot the wildebeest before it accelerated. What kind of archery is this? The brothers of the Wei family are nothing more than this, right? Everyone looked at Chenfan with admiration on their faces. Yes, they were really convinced. Even Chen Guodong was amazed by Chenfan's performance. He originally thought that Chenfan only had a high hit rate when he aimed at a fixed target, but it turned out that he could be so good when he aimed at a moving target. So, he had something hidden last night. Chenfan smiled sheepishly. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm just a blind cat who encountered a dead mouse. If it happens again, I'm afraid it won't work. However, everyone looked like they believed you. Xiaofan, you have already used this excuse last time, have you forgotten? The bald man patted Chenfan on the shoulder. Next time, remember to use something fresher. That's right, Xiaofan, what's so modest about this? Your archery skills are so good, we can't even be happy in time. Isn't that right? Today is the day when our village has harvested the most prey. If the people in the village saw us returning with so many prey, they would smile crookedly. What does this mean? With Xiaofan, a sharpshooter, we should have so many prey every day from now on. That's right. When we came out this time, we all hugged his lap. Xiaofan, how awesome. Everyone was talking excitedly and salivating. Yesterday, the Wei brothers left and the hunting team found nothing. This morning, they thought they were going to make the same mistake again, but God gave them a big surprise. How could it not be exciting? Chenfan also looked at them with a smile. No matter what, he had proved that in this world where ordinary people were as humble as ants, he could lead the people in the village to survive. Although I am only keeping everyone alive for the time being, hope is like a flame, and one day it will burst into flames. Therefore, the next thing to do is, in addition to continuing to improve basic archery, it is best to learn more boxing moves to strengthen your body, in order to become stronger. Just when he was lost in thought, a broad, calloused palm was placed on his shoulder. Looking back, Chen Guodong smiled at him. The village was still as peaceful as ever. In the open space in front of the warehouse, Wang Ping and others were still practicing their marksmanship. The lame man stood aside, obviously absent-minded. Uncle Jong, are you worried about Brother Fan and the others? Wang Ping asked. The lame man glanced at him and said, you are the only one who has a lot to do. It seems that others will rest later, but you don't need it. Don't. Wang Ping wanted to cry but had no tears. He regretted that he talked too much, but he couldn't help it. Zhao Feng spoke up at this time. Uncle Jong, can Chenfan hit the prey with his archery skills? Disaster, the lame man said without thinking. Oh no. Wang Ping was stunned. Brother Fan is so powerful. How could he miss the prey when he hit a few arrows last time? Yeah. The words resonated with others. The lame man looked straight at him and asked, boy, do you know why before the mutation, our martial arts were not as good as those foreign fighting skills? Wang Ping was startled, feeling that the topic span was a bit wide, but he still nodded honestly and said, I don't know. Because of the lack of actual combat. The lame man's expression showed that he knew you didn't know. Whether it's Tai Chi, Xingyi Quan, or Bagua Quan, they all lack actual combat skills. How can he be his opponent? The same goes for Xiaofan's archery. No matter how good he looks, I don't know how much it can perform in the wild. The same goes for you. Look, you are holding the gun properly now. If you go to the wild and fight against a vicious beast, your legs will be weak from fear, let alone holding the gun tightly. Quote. Everyone lowered their heads. Although I was not convinced in my heart, I really didn't dare to let them go out tomorrow. But, just when he was about to say something to encourage everyone, there was a burst of noise at the entrance of the village. The noise was unprecedented. Suddenly, several people looked at each other. What's the situation? Wang Ping looked over there, confused. This movement, could it be that the hunting team is back? No, it's impossible, right? How could they come back so early? The young man next to him retorted subconsciously. You can bring the prey back to the hunting team, that's it. But, didn't Uncle Guodong and the others just go out? Are they back so soon? Or are they still bringing the prey? The lame man was also full of doubts. When in the past had the hunting team not come back near dusk? If you come back after finishing something, something must have happened. What if you come back early? Go over and have a look, he said, limping forward. There is a vague guess in my heart. Could it be that there is prey? Before they even got close, they heard people running around telling each other that this was a great harvest. There were not only several wasteland rabbits, but also a wildebeest weighing 200 to 300 kilograms. When they reached the door, the crowd in front formed a circle, all talking excitedly. A few people finally squeezed in. When they saw the prey lying flat on the ground, their pupils dilated rapidly, and their faces were full of disbelief. Color. However, the lame man noticed one thing in common, that is, these prey had arrows stuck in their bodies, and without exception, they all hit the target. Don't tell me, it's him. His face turned green and white, and a figure appeared in his mind. Chapter 21. Chenfan. The Wei brothers are gone. Who else in the hunting team besides him can use arrows? But how is this possible? Looking at these prey, they were all killed by one arrow. Apart from that, there were no wounds on their bodies. In other words, these prey were probably shot, and no one else could take action. Chenfan, he is just a novice in practicing archery. He just left the village for the first time and he has captured so many prey. Is it possible? He looked at the hunting team surrounded by them, but Chenfan was nowhere to be seen. Wang Ping and others also slowly noticed this and had a bad guess. Judging from Uncle Guodong's, his expression is also full of joy, isn't that strange? More and more people were rushing around. Looking at the prey, they were overjoyed, and some were so excited that tears filled their eyes. Ahem, everyone, please be quiet. Seeing that it was almost done, the bald man asked everyone to quiet down, then pointed at the prey on the ground and said, "Do you know how we caught so many prey today? Hundreds of people, you look at me, I look at you." Someone said, "He was shot with an arrow." That's right. The bald man was very happy and immediately focused on Wang Ping in the crowd. Swipe, the ground, dozens or hundreds of eyes looked at it. Wang Ping said bravely, "Uncle Lu, is it Brother Fan who did it?" "Yes, was it Chenfan who did it?" Zhao Feng and the others became nervous unconsciously. Their intuition told them that it should be, but they didn't get a definite answer, and they didn't dare to draw a conclusion, because Uncle Jong said before that Chenfan wanted to shoot his prey the first time he went out. Very unlikely. The bald man smiled broadly and glanced at everyone present. "Yes, these prey were all shot by Chenfan. We went out with them today, and apart from helping to transport the prey back, we almost didn't do anything to help." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a gasp of air from all around. Chenfan. Of course they remembered Chen Guodong's son, who was carrying a bow and arrow and going out with the hunting party this morning, and it caused a lot of discussion at the time. In their opinion, it is too dangerous for such a big child to go out. They don't expect him to be able to shoot the prey and come back safe and sound. It is a blessing. As a result, Lu Yong said that he shot these prey alone. "This sounds like a fantasy. You don't believe it. Ha ha ha, if we hadn't seen it with our own eyes, we wouldn't have believed it either." A middle-aged man laughed. "You guys didn't see how cool Xiaofan was when he shot the wildebeest, with 3 arrows in a row, so fast that we didn't even react." "Yes, the first arrow was empty at that time. I thought it was over, but who knew it would be so fast?" An arrow pierced the throat and knocked the wildebeest to the ground. "This archery skill is really amazing. In my opinion, with Xiaofan here in our village, we won't have to worry about being hungry again." Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up. In this world, it is a great happiness to not endure hunger. "Uncle Lu, you've been talking for a long time, where are Brother Fan and the others?" Wang Ping couldn't help but ask. "I glanced at the crowd around me again, but I didn't see that figure either." "Yes, where are the people? Why didn't you see anyone?" Others also reacted and wanted to thank this great hero. "Ahem," the bald man laughed, "he is rather thin-skinned and has already gone back. But don't worry, everyone, if you want to meet, there will be more opportunities in the future. Come, everyone will line up and share the meat." In an instant, the atmosphere at the scene was directly pushed to its peak. Chenfan was at home at this time, looking at his mother helplessly. "Mom, I'm really fine, I'm not hurt at all." As he spoke, he turned around a few times. "Is everything okay?" The woman still didn't quite believe it. The younger brother nodded aside, also looking doubtful. "Yes." Chenfan sighed, sat down and took a sip of water. Although there was lack of food and clothing, there was still no shortage of water in the village. If you were hungry, you could use water to satisfy your hunger. If you were worried, you could heat it up before drinking. "It's okay." The woman was completely relieved and said, "You and your dad went out, and I was restless at home, for fear that something would happen to one of you too. Fortunately, you both came back safely, by the way." She seemed to realize something was wrong. "Why did you come back so early today?" "Yes, brother, it's so lively at the entrance to the village." "Have you caught prey?" Chen looked at Chenfan eagerly. "Yes." Chenfan touched his head and said with a smile, "Not only did I catch the prey, but I also had a great harvest." "Harvest?" Chen was so angry that he almost cried out. "Harvest?" The woman was stunned. "Yes." Chenfan smiled and told what happened, leaving the two of them dumbfounded. "In other words, you were the one who killed all those prey with a bow and arrow?" The woman looked at Chenfan and asked dumbfounded. "You can't say that." Chenfan shook his head. "Everyone contributed. Secondly, observing and alerting the surroundings, and finally transporting the prey. The main reason is that there are more people in strength, which invisibly avoids a lot of trouble. Otherwise, if he is allowed to go out alone, it is difficult to say whether he can come back safely. Then it's you who made the most of it, didn't you?" The woman rolled her eyes and then said, "Don't worry, your mother and I are not the kind of people who don't know the general situation. In the past, when the Wei brothers were here, they made great efforts to capture the prey. For this kind of distribution, I didn't say anything, and now I wouldn't say anything if it were you, but it would be great if they could leave a day later." Yes, Chenfan also felt pity. Just one day away. When Chen Guodong came back near noon with almost 30 kilograms of meat, the room was instantly filled with laughter and laughter. Originally I didn't want to share so much, but everyone strongly requested it. He was a bit dumbfounded. But this time, other people in the village also got a lot. Each household started with at least 5 or 6 pounds. If you save some food, you can last a week. I'm going to cook it. The woman smiled happily, took a piece of meat weighing at least 2 or 3 kilograms, and walked into the kitchen. The rest was stored. Fortunately, it was already autumn and could be stored for a while. Of course, if not eaten soon, it will go bad unless salted. In the village, salt is more precious than food. You only dare to sprinkle a little when cooking and use it to marinate animal meat. It is really a luxury. Chenfan looked forward to it. The last time he had the wasteland rabbit meat, 10 pieces provided him with 1 potential point. By estimation, the weight of 10 pieces of meat was only about 1 to 2 taels. I'll eat a pound of this meal later, isn't it too much? The potential points provided are at least 5. If this is wildebeest meat, it will only be more. Strengthening the body once is definitely more than enough. But there was still some time. Taking this opportunity, he looked at Chen Guodong and asked, "Dad, do you know who in the village knows some martial arts similar to Tai Chi? You want to learn Tai Chi?" Chen Guodong had just sat down, and his eyes showed surprise when he heard this. Yes, Chenfan nodded and explained. "I heard that practicing Tai Chi can strengthen the body. I want to use this to improve my strength and be able to draw a heavier bow." Having said that, he has no doubt that Tai Chi can improve attributes. After all, even basic archery skills can improve physical and strength attributes. Tai Chi, as a well-known internal martial art in previous generations, cannot be without its effect. I see. A look of understanding appeared in Chen Guodong's eyes, and then he tried to recall it and said, "There seems to be no one in the village who knows this." "There's none." Chenfan couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Chen Guodong glanced at him, feeling unbearable, and comforted, "Maybe there is, but we didn't find it. Let's do it. After lunch, I'll go and ask. Maybe someone will say no." The voice stopped suddenly, and he suddenly thought of something. "Maybe your Uncle Jong can." Chenfan was startled. It seems like, is this really the case? Since he can teach the young people in the village to practice spear skills, he must have some foundation in martial arts. With a foundation in martial arts, it is impossible not to have an understanding of traditional martial arts similar to Tai Chi. I remembered. At this moment, Chen Guodong said again, "Not long after you came to the village, your Uncle Jong tried to teach us some ways to strengthen our body. However, everyone was so hungry that they were busy leaving the village. When hunting, how can I think about standing on certain posts or practicing boxing?" Later, it stopped. Quote, "Is that so? That would be great." Chenfan was overjoyed. Yes, at that time, when the Wei brothers were here, they often visited him, probably to ask for his advice. That's right, Chen Guodong fell into memories. The Wei brothers were the same as you. They all used 60 in the beginning. After about 2 or 3 years of hard work, the bow used weighed 80 kilograms, and then the previous 100 kilograms. This must be the effect of martial arts training. I also heard that before the Wei brothers left, they approached your Uncle Jong and seemed to want to take him with them, but they were rejected. Chenfan took a deep breath. No wonder he heard Uncle Jong mention 2 days ago that the Wei brothers might not stay for too long. He was shocked in his heart that this turned out to be the case. Everything connects. From this point of view, this Uncle Jong is indeed an extraordinary person. If his legs were not lame, he must be the main force in the hunting team. "Dad, who is this Uncle Jong? How do you know each other?" he asked curiously. Chen Guodong looked embarrassed. "Actually, he is not from our village." "Ah, it all started 3 years ago. At that time, when you, Uncle Lu, and the Wei brothers and I were returning from hunting, we encountered a man covered in blood, lying in the grass. The blood attracted 1 or 2 steppenwolves. watching eagerly not far away. At that time, I thought he was a dead man, but your Uncle Lu ran to check and found that he was still breathing, so he carried him back. His physique was indeed extraordinary. He was still alive after suffering such a serious gunshot wound. Come down. Quote. Gunshot wound. Chenfan exclaimed. That's right. Chen Guodong also had a look of fear in his eyes. I have never seen a person with more than 10 rounds of bullets on his body. Because of this incident, everyone had differences and believed that this person should not be kept. In the end, I stayed. Chenfan said. Chen Guodong didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said, yes, we have rescued him, we can't throw him out again. At that time, he was lying on the roadside, and no one saw who took him away, so I made the decision and kept him. Fortunately, he was indeed very lucky. After he woke up, he stayed in the village. To this day, we were still wary of him at the beginning, but later it turned out that he was indeed a trustworthy person. Quote. Chenfan also nodded. He also understood why the Wei brothers wanted to take Uncle Jong with them, but the other party would not agree. Although his father's management style and his personality cannot retain ambitious and capable people, the good thing is that he will also gather a group of die-hard loyalists around him. What are you talking about? So entranced. A woman's voice sounded, and she placed the cooked rabbit meat on the table. There was no special cooking method. The condiments were just a little salt, but the meat was fragrant and mouth-watering. Let's eat first. Chen Guodong smiled and said, Xiaofan, thanks to you this time, I can eat freely. Chenfan chuckled and was not in a hurry to eat. He picked up several pieces of meat and put them into his brother's bowl. The latter's saliva almost turned into a waterfall. Wow, thank you brother. Chen shouted happily. Chen Guodong both smiled heartily when they saw this scene. Chenfan then picked up a piece of rabbit meat and put it into his mouth, chewing it carefully. Although he couldn't wait to increase his potential points by eating the meat of ferocious beasts, the process of eating meat was originally a kind of enjoyment. After swallowing the piece of meat, a piece of information appeared in his mind. Potential point plus 0.1. In this way, time passed by little, and Chenfan felt 67% full after eating almost a pound of meat. Dad, Mom, I'm full. He put down his chopsticks and touched his belly with satisfaction. It is no exaggeration to say that this should be the fullest meal he has had in the past few days. As for why I didn't eat very full, it was because my parents didn't use chopsticks at all. Are you full now? The woman's eyes narrowed as she smiled. There's still half of it, please eat more. Yes, I will practice bowing later. If you don't have enough strength, you can't do it. I'm so full, Chenfan chuckled, I'm going to find Uncle Jong. After saying that, he disappeared in a flash. This child seems to be a lot more sensible, the woman sighed. Yes, Chen Guodong nodded happily. Chenfan walked on the dirt road leading to the warehouse and looked at the attribute panel. Potential points. 5.6 1.1 day. That's right, so many potential points are enough for him to strengthen his body again. But he was in no hurry to strengthen. After lunch, he is now very energetic. Strengthening immediately will waste an opportunity for physical recovery. It is undoubtedly better to wait until he is exhausted from practicing archery and then strengthen. Of course, there's more to it than just practicing archery. When he arrived at the open space in front of the warehouse, he immediately caused a sensation. Wang Ping and others excitedly surrounded him and started talking about it. Brother Fan, awesome, I heard that you shot all the prey this time. Isn't that amazing? I knew that Brother Fan, your archery skills are so good, you will definitely shine in the wild. Brother Fan, you are simply my idol. Take care of me, little brother. Brother Fan, if I were a woman, I would definitely give birth to your child. Okay. Chenfan almost vomited out the meal he had just eaten, and asked, where is Uncle Jong? Uncle Jong, over there. Wang Ping and others turned around and pointed at the lame man not far away. The latter looked calm at this moment, glanced at Chenfan and said, are you here? You performed well this time, don't be arrogant and complacent. Even if it is a wildebeest, it is a low-level beast. If you encounter an intermediate beast, you will know the bow in your hand is just tickling them. This. When Wang Ping and others heard this, they looked at each other. Uncle Jong is too unkind. Brother Fan is the well-deserved MVP of the hunting team this time, and everyone in the village is full of praise. Will he die if he praises him for a few words? Chenfan smiled nonchalantly, nodded and said, what Uncle Jong taught us is that we encountered an armored rhino this time when we went out. Iron-armored rhino. Wang Ping and others were shocked. The lame man's eyelids also jumped a few times very quickly. We took a detour and didn't attract its attention. Several people immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Brother Fan, you scared me to death. That thing is not something ordinary people can mess with. Wang Ping said speechlessly. Yes, I heard that the people in the stockade provoked a few armored rhinos and were chased all the way to the stockade. The walls were broken open by the crazy armored rhinoceros, and they finally left after they vented their anger. Quote. Chenfan nodded, and then his eyes fell on the lame man. So, Uncle Jong, I want to learn some boxing moves from you to increase your strength. If one day, you really encounter an armored rhinoceros, you can also have the power to protect yourself. Zhang, a boxing move that increases strength. Wang Ping and others opened their mouths and looked at Chenfan and then at the lame man. What's going on? It's so good, why are we talking about this? A flash of surprise flashed deep in the lame man's eyes, and then he asked, you know everything? Chenfan responded, Uncle Wei and the others must have learned this to be able to draw a bow weighing 60 kilograms from the beginning to now being able to draw a bow weighing 100 kilograms, right? Wang Ping and others were stunned, while Zhao Feng's breathing became rapid. He vaguely noticed that he seemed to have come into contact with something terrible. Good. The lame man nodded, glanced at Wang Ping and others, and then fell on Chenfan. You still remember the warrior I told you about, right? Of course I remember. Chenfan nodded hurriedly. After the changes in the world, awakened people appeared in human beings, whose combat power is comparable to thermal weapons, but ordinary people are not without the ability to protect themselves and can only wait to die. Before the mutation, ordinary people could strengthen their physique through exercise. After the mutation, the upper limit of the human body was broken, and ordinary people could temper their bodies to make their muscles and bones strong and powerful. This process is called body tempering. Quote. Tempering body. Tempering body. Everyone, including Chenfan, exclaimed. For Wang Ping and others, this statement was obviously unheard of. But Chenfan was somewhat mentally prepared. He thought that the realm column on the system now showed none. If it showed yes, it should be what Uncle Jong said, tempering body, right? Good. The lame man looked serious. The tempered body is divided into levels 1 to 3 according to muscle strength. There is nothing wrong with dividing it into the front, middle and late stages. Under normal circumstances, the muscle strength of ordinary people when punching will not exceed 50 kilograms. The vast majority of people in the village are like this level. If it can reach 100 kilograms, it has reached the first level of body tempering and can be called a warrior. The Wei brothers who left are at this level. Pure strength can draw a 200-kilogram bow, but it will be exhausted after one pull. A bow of 100 pounds is just right. You may not know what this means. Quote. He glanced at Chenfan and explained. A bow with a tension of 100 kilograms can penetrate leather armor from a distance of 200 meters. Even chain armor with fine texture can also penetrate it. Even if it encounters an armored rhinoceros, it can penetrate it. Shoot. Chenfan took a deep breath. He can now draw a bow weighing 60 kilograms, and there is still a long way to go before he can draw a bow weighing 100 kilograms. If it reaches 150 kilograms, it is the second level of body tempering, the third level of body tempering, and the muscle strength can reach 200 kilograms, which is close to the human boxing champion before the mutation. This kind of strength can draw a 200-kilogram longbow and shoot. Kill targets within 400 to 500 meters. Everyone gasped again. Uncle Jong, Chenfan thought of the 300-pound longbow in the warehouse and couldn't help but ask, is it just starting with body tempering? Wang Ping opened his mouth wide enough to fit several eggs. Is this a strong person just starting out? The lame man glanced at him approvingly. Yes, after tempering the body, there is meat refining. A warrior who has reached this level has muscles as hard as steel and is extremely powerful. One punch has the power of 1,000 kilograms, and he can pull apart 5 people with one hand. 100-pound war bow and an armored rhinoceros are just living targets in front of such a warrior. Everyone gasped again. What about further up? Chenfan couldn't help but ask. The higher you go, the more vigorous you will be. The lame man seemed to be lost in memories and said slowly, Enter Jin is divided into Ming Jin, Dark Jin, and Hua Jin. Before the mutation, I only heard that some people had reached Ming Jin and gathered all their strength to punch, can explode the air. And Jin, I heard that some people can reach it, but most of them are swindlers, and they are not worthy of belief. Transforming strength is even unheard of. But now something strange has happened. Chenfan hesitated before speaking. Well, something has happened now. In Anshan City, 100 kilometers away from here, there are people who have reached the level of transformation. Their power is unfathomable, even the Junshi, which is only seen in martial arts novels. I heard that some people have practiced it. What? So angry. Oh my god, really? Several people were shocked. Even more excited. This warrior seems to be very strong, right? Chenfan couldn't help but hear what his father said, and when he contacted him again, he felt more and more that this Uncle Jong might have come from Anshan City, and he had offended someone who was not known, and was being hunted. Could it be that Uncle Jong is a powerful warrior? Don't be happy too early. The lame man snorted and poured a basin of cold water on everyone. What can you do even if you are a powerful martial artist? Let alone in front of the awakened ones, even if you are hit in the head with a gun by an ordinary person, you will definitely die. Even those who have developed true energy may not be able to block the bullets. But if you can survive in this world, you have the ability to protect yourself. Chenfan said with a smile. The lame man was startled and nodded. Yes, even if it is only the first level of body tempering, it is much better than ordinary people. So, are you sure you want to learn martial arts from me? Chenfan was about to answer, but the other party waved his hand. Listen to me first. No matter what boxing technique it is not easy to master it overnight, especially now that you know nothing about anything except archery. So, you have to start practicing the basic skills. After you have mastered the basic skills, I can teach you boxing. This is very boring, even more boring than practicing archery. It will take you a few years to complete your training. It can take at least a few years or a lifetime at most. Are you mentally prepared for this? Asked the lame man. Chenfan took a deep breath and said without hesitation, yes. Okay, I hope you can really persevere when the time comes. He said in a calm tone, but he thought in his heart that with this boy's perseverance and talent, maybe he could really wake up to himself. Uncle Jong, Zhao Feng, who was on the side, mustered up his courage and said, I also want to learn boxing skills from you. I want, too. Uncle Jong, I too. The remaining few people scrambled to get there. Who doesn't want to have power and live a better life? The lame man was not surprised and said calmly, teaching one is teaching several is teaching, but I am afraid of you and can't persist. Several people suddenly became excited and swore to God. In comparison, Zhao Feng was much quieter, with fighting spirit burning in his eyes. All right, the lame man waved his hand, since you all want to learn, let's get started. Gudong, even Chenfan swallowed his saliva. Is this about to start? No matter what kind of martial arts you practice, you must start with the most basic stance. If you don't stand, your legs will be weak and your posture will be deformed when you punch. In the end, you will get twice the result with half the effort. Therefore, in order to increase your skill and strengthen your lower body, you must stand pile. Everyone nodded like chickens pecking at rice, their eyes full of expectation. Zhanzhuang is the foundation, and what I want to teach you next is the foundation of Zhanzhuang, which is called Wujizhuang. Only when you have achieved some success in Wujizhuang can you practice Tai Chi Zhuang. Once you have mastered Tai Chi Zhuang, you can formally learn Tai Chi. If you are not satisfied, you can continue to learn the three-body posture. This is the beginning of all changes in the posture. As the saying goes, the three-body stance is inseparable. After learning these three-body stance, you can learn Xingyiquan, not only Xingyiquan but also Xingyiquan. You can learn Wu Qin Shi, Bagua Zhang, etc. Quote. Everyone looked embarrassed when they heard this. You have to practice Wujizhuang first. After practicing Wujizhuang, you still need to practice Tai Chi Zhuan, and then you can learn Tai Chi. As for if you want to learn Xingyiquan, do you still need to practice the three-body posture after the Tai Chi posture? How long will this take? Why, do you find this difficult? The lame man snorted coldly. This is internal strength, the most important thing. If you practice boxing without practicing martial arts, you will be in vain. What's more, it doesn't include basic gestures, basic kicks, and basic footwork. You all have to do these. Practice from scratch. It's not too late to regret it now. As he said that, he glanced at several people and said, I still want to take a step forward. Chenfan took a step forward with a smile. Zhao Feng followed closely behind. Wang Ping and others looked at each other and followed. Hee. The lame man smiled meaningfully and said, no one quits. Okay, then let's stand at the Wuji Zhuang for an hour. After standing, I will teach you the basic gestures. In Wuji Zhuang, the practitioner stands in an upright posture, with his hands hanging down naturally, his head raised, his chin slightly retracted, breathing naturally and imagining himself integrating into nature. Chenfan took the opportunity to look at the attribute panel. As expected, there was an extra line of small words in the skill column. Promise type. LV0, 0%. He was overjoyed. He had learned another skill. He wondered what kind of characteristics he would unlock after reaching level 1. Calm down and don't think wildly. Just then, the lame man passed by him and glanced at him. Chenfan was a little embarrassed. Uncle Jong's eyes were a bit poisonous, right? The atmosphere was surprisingly quiet. Occasionally, people passed by and looked at the few people standing upright with confused expressions on their faces. Time passed by, and several people began to think, isn't this Wuji pile just like standing in a military posture? To my legs are so sore, and my head is so itchy. Is there something crawling on it? Then to help, I really can't hold on anymore. How long is 1 hour left? It's only been less than 10 minutes. Can't you hold on? The lame man sneered, if you can't hold on, just give up. Not everyone can become a warrior. You must learn to recognize reality. When Chenfan heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched. Uncle Jong was not only poisonous in his eyes, but also poisonous in his mouth. But he actually felt pretty good, probably because his physique was higher than that of ordinary people, and he felt a little relaxed. After another 10 minutes, someone finally couldn't hold it anymore and was so ashamed. Go and rest. The lame man waved his hand and looked at the others. One of them can't hold on anymore. If the rest of you feel like you can't hold on anymore, just come out. No one agreed. A few more minutes passed, and one after another, some people chose to give up. Another 10 minutes passed, and Wang Ping couldn't stand it any longer, so he withdrew with a blush. Only Chenfan and Zhao Feng were left. Zhao Feng gritted his teeth. No matter what, he would persevere. I have already lost to Chenfan once in archery. This time, I cannot lose again. He, Zhao Feng, is no weaker than anyone else. Isn't this proficiency level too slow? Chenfan looked forward, but his attention was on the attribute panel. At least 40 minutes have passed, and the proficiency of the Wuji style is only about 4%. In other words, only 10 minutes of standing still can increase the proficiency by 1%. If you want to advance to level 1, you need to stand for at least 1000 minutes, which is 16 hours. At first glance, it seems less difficult than basic archery, just stand still, that's it, but in fact, it's much more tiring. At least he only had sore arms before, and he can still enjoy the massage service, even though he is a big man who picks his feet, which provided. But now my whole body aches, it's really terrible. He really doubted that after this hour, could he do it a second time? What about the third time? I guess that's the limit, right? In this way, it will take 4 or 5 days just to upgrade Promise Style to LV1. This is just getting started, right? Uncle Jong said, only when you have some success in Wuji style can you learn Tai Chi style, and only after you have mastered Tai Chi style can you learn the serious Tai Chi style. Do you have to practice this until the end of the year? Don't forget, stance is also basic. Also basic or basic gestures, basic footwork, and basic leg skills. Do we really have to follow a step-by-step approach, and not spend years and months? In this case, when can we actually start practicing Tai Chi? Time waits not for us. Thinking of this, his attention fell on the experience points. A total of 17 experience points were accumulated during the morning's hunting. If used to improve the basic archery level 4, it would only increase the proficiency by 17%. It can be used on level 0 Wuji style, so you won't be disappointed, right? Chenfan made a decision, and with a thought, he added a little experience point. A flash of inspiration seemed to flash in his mind, and then a strange yet extremely familiar memory appeared. Promise type. LV0, 54%. Really? The corner of Chenfan's mouth curled up in an unnoticeable arc. A little experience increased his progress by half. If he added a little more, wouldn't he be promoted to level 1? By then, new features will surely be unlocked, right? Thinking of this, he added some experience points. In an instant, a warm current flowed through him, and the pain in various parts of his body was immediately relieved a lot. This feeling seems familiar. Could it be to strengthen your body? He muttered in his mind and looked at the panel. Promise style. LV1, 1% characteristics, strengthening level 1. As expected, the level 1 physical strengthening characteristic increases the physical attribute by 1 point. It's not a surprise, but it's not bad either. It's not as good as the improvement brought by basic archery, which is expected. After all, the difficulty is quite different. I don't know if level 1 Wuji style meets Uncle Jong's requirements. He did not continue to add, but adjusted his posture slightly and watched Zhang Ren's reaction from the corner of his eye. The next moment, when the lame man's eyes fell on Chenfan, his pupils shrank, obviously a little surprised. This kid really has some talent. He secretly thought that it would take at least a week for most people to even get started with the Wuji style. Even for those with high talent, it would take 2 or 3 days. This kid, standing up for the first time, actually looked decent. If he practices a few more times, he should be able to tell him the complete Tai Chi style. He turned his eyes happily and looked at Zhao Feng beside him. This kid has a commendable perseverance. It can be seen that he is secretly competing with Chenfan in his heart. Unfortunately, his talent is still a bit lacking, but hard work can make up for his weakness. Why? Chenfan frowned slightly. Still not working. There's nothing we can do about it. He looked at the remaining 14 experience points, and with a thought, he added a little more to promise style. This time, 1 point of experience increased the progress by 1/3. He kept doing it and clicked twice in succession. In an instant, the warmth from before surged through my body again, and fatigue was swept away. Promise style. LV2, 0% characteristics, strengthening level 2. Not only the physical improvement, but also the infinite experience. At this moment, for him, standing there motionless was not a torture, but a new way of relaxing, including his mind. This boy. The lame man's eyes widened for a moment, with a look of disbelief on his face. If someone wasn't looking at him, he would have rubbed his eyes. Here, how did this guy do it? There seemed to be a voice inside him shouting. When I saw him just now, he was just a beginner. Why is he so successful now? Even for him, it took him almost more than a month to reach this state. Is this kid a monster? The understanding is so amazing. Wang Ping and others naturally didn't know what the lame man was thinking, but it was a bit strange to see him staring at Chenfan. It seems that it should be enough. Fortunately, I don't have the urge to continue upgrading. Chenfan came back to his senses and noticed the shocked expression on the lame man's face, pretending to be confused. Uncle Jong, what's wrong? Is there something on my face? Cough, cough. The lame man coughed twice, looked away and said, nothing, just stand your ground. Oh, Chenfan glanced at him strangely, enjoying the sense of relaxation that the Wuji pose brought to him. He suddenly thought that after he was tired from practicing archery, standing on the Wuji pile for an hour seemed like a good choice. Finally, the hour is up. Zhao Feng was so tired that he collapsed on the ground, his whole body aching. Chenfan seemed to be fine, and his condition was better than before. Brother Fan, aren't you tired? Wang Ping couldn't help but ask. Yes, Brother Fan, why do you feel like you are in better spirits? Yeah, Chenfan scratched his head and said with a confused expression, I'm not sure, but it feels quite comfortable when I stand. True and false. Several people looked at each other. Were they lying? You're almost exhausted, are you still comfortable? If they hadn't experienced it just now, they might really believe it. He is different from you. The lame man's voice sounded, "You haven't started yet, so of course you feel tired." This kid, the corner of his mouth twitched, is already qualified to learn Tai Chi. What? Zhao Feng and others opened their mouths wide, and their whole bodies were petrified. Quote exclamation mark quote. Chenfan also showed a shocked expression. His voice was trembling, he was a little excited and looked at the lame man in disbelief. "Uncle Jong, what are you saying? I have already started, can I learn Tai Chi?" The lame man nodded. "After I teach you basic gestures and basic footwork, I will teach you Tai Chi alone." "Thank you Uncle Jong, thank you Uncle Jong." Chenfan was so excited that he was pretending, but for the most part, his feelings were genuine. "Oh my god, Brother Fan is starting now. No, didn't Uncle Jong say that it would take an average person a week or two to get started? How envious are you? We couldn't last even half an hour. Chenfan can learn Tai Chi. I really want to learn Tai Chi too," several people said sourly. When the lame man heard this, he wanted to tell them that it was not a beginner's course, but one that could only be learned after a certain level of success. However, considering that this might make Chenfan proud and complacent, he decided to forget it after thinking about it. Zhao Feng looked at Chenfan with complicated eyes and a wry smile on his lips. He originally thought that he could hold on for an hour and finally catch up with Chenfan, but who knew, it would still be a huge difference. But, can't give up. Okay, next I will teach you basic gestures, that is, fists, palms, claws, etc. Only when you are familiar with these can you lay a solid foundation and be able to practice basic boxing, basic palm, Tai Chi, etc. After saying that, he glanced at Chenfan calmly and thought to himself, this kid, can't he read at once and remember it all? Everyone stood in a line. This process of introducing basic gestures is a little more interesting than the stance just now, but it's just a little bit, and soon the various awkward names confused everyone. Who would have thought that a single palm can be divided into 5 types of palm shapes: yang palm, yin palm, upright palm, reverse palm, and horizontal palm. The most outrageous thing is that there are 2 types of standing palms. Chenfan was also confused by what he heard. There are so many things, if you become familiar with them by practicing over and over again, a week will be less, right? He looked at the extra line of small words in the skill column. Basic gesture. LV0, 0%. Otherwise, just keep adding more. Almost an hour or 2 passed, and Chenfan looked at the skill bar with satisfaction. Promise style. LV2, 0% characteristics, strengthening level 2. Basic gesture. LV1, 0%. Basic kicking skills. LV1, 0% characteristics, powerful level 1. Basic footwork. LV1, 0% characteristics, swiftness level 1. The strength attribute is the same as the extraordinary arm strength. Every time you upgrade to a level, you will increase the strength attribute by 1 point. The agility attribute will be increased by a point of agility attribute every time you increase the level. As the basic gesture level increases, no special features appear, but there is a large and clear memory in the mind. Of course, the experience points required for improvement are also small, and one level is upgraded by 1 point. Basic kick technique, basic foot technique are the same as Wuji style. To upgrade from level 0 to level 1, 2 experience points are required. In this way, by consuming 10 experience points, you not only get a lot of memory, but also improve 2 points of physical fitness, 1 point of strength, and 1 point of agility. There are many benefits. In fact, Chenfan still had a guess in his heart. He feels that there is probably no upper level limit for these basics. As long as the experience value is enough, one can always rise. In the same way, the attribute improvements brought about will probably have no end. But at the same time, he also has a concern, that is, the improvement brought by increasing the level of basic skills is likely to be average. Just like what Uncle Jong said about Zanzhuang, from Wuji Zhuang to Tai Chi Zhuang and then to 3-body Zhuang. This is not without reason. It is not only from easy to difficult, but the improvements should be bigger and bigger. Therefore, he upgraded them all to 1 level, leaving the remaining 7 experience points to see the effects. Alright, at this moment, the lame man's voice sounded. He glanced at the crowd with grimaces and said, I'm not asking you all to remember it today. From now on, I will demonstrate it once a day. You should also follow suit and you will always remember it. Yes, besides, these are the foundations among the foundations. If you can't do these things well, you should give up the idea of practicing martial arts as soon as possible. Sure enough, when these words were said, several people became excited. Uncle Jong, we will definitely remember it. That's right, it's just this little thing. What's so rare about it? Reading is much more interesting than before. Chenfan rolled his eyes and thought to himself that Uncle Jong really doesn't like to use aggressive methods. But Wang Ping and the others seemed to like this. No wonder, after all, not everyone has the same life experience as him. Okay, that's it for today. Let's go practice marksmanship. Chenfan, please stay here for a while. After the words fell, several people left with envious faces. Chenfan smiled sheepishly and said, Uncle Jong, are you going to teach me Tai Chi? Seeing this, Zhang Ren always felt that the other party was cheap, and felt a little unhappy for no reason. He snorted coldly from his nose and said, well, how on earth did you do it? Get started in one go. Ah, Chenfan scratched his head, I don't know either. I just have a feeling that standing like that doesn't take much effort, and it also frees the mind, just like the feeling when smoking. Smokes. Zhang Ren licked his lips subconsciously. Ahem, this has nothing to do with smoking. If you don't know how to compare it, don't use it. In short, your talent is not bad. If you study Tai Chi with your heart, you can get started in 1 or a week. We were all that's right. Yes, Chenfan nodded repeatedly, as if to say, what are you waiting for? Let's start quickly. Listen, Zhang Ren's face returned to its original expression. Tai Chi is born from Wu Ji, the mother of Yin and Yang, which means that Tai Chi evolved from Wu Ji and is the nature of Yin and Yang. Everything in the world has two sides, Yin and Yang. When talking about martial arts, we must talk about Zhuang Gong. Zhuang Gong is divided into static Zhuang and dynamic Zhuang. Only after you have mastered the static Zhuang can you start practicing the dynamic Zhuang, which is the Tai Chi Zhuan I am going to give you next. Quote. Soon, Chenfan understood that what the other party said was indeed the truth. Tai Chi style. LV0, 0%. Unlocking requirements. Wuji pile LV2, achieved. This made him vaguely guess. Could it be that the subsequent 3 body postures, including Tai Chi, all have similar prerequisites? If they cannot be met, ordinary people will not be able to get started. If it were him, his proficiency would not be activated. Perhaps, this is really the case. Next, start practicing. The initial movements are similar to the Wuji pile. Then, you have to slightly bend your legs and slowly raise your arms to form a ring in front of your chest. After only a few minutes, Chenfan felt his arms were sore and he couldn't hold on any longer. Remember how I taught you how to close it, right? After every 5 minutes of holding on, you can rest for 1 minute and just stand for an hour. Zhang Ren glanced at him and said calmly. Chenfan breathed a sigh of relief, and after pulling back, he stretched out his muscles. I have to say that this Tai Chi pose is much more tiring than the Wuji pose. Wouldn't it be even more tiring if we went to the following 3 body pose? Taking this opportunity, he glanced at the skill bar, and sure enough, a new line of small words appeared. Tai Chi style. LV0, 0.05%. Quote, quote. He was a little stunned. Good guy, it only rose 5/10,000ths in 5 minutes. A 10,000th increase in proficiency in 1 minute. If you want to level up, you have to stand for 10,000 minutes. 1. Exactly 1 week. He glanced at Zhang Ren and thought that Uncle Zhang was really a ruthless person. Why didn't he even go to the toilet in order to practice? Practice slowly first. This Tai Chi pose is the starting movement of all Tai Chi routines. If you practice it well, you can get twice the result with half the effort. Don't be lazy. After Zhang Ren finished speaking, he walked towards Wang Ping and others. Chenfan gritted his teeth, looked at his back, and temporarily gave up his plan to add more points. After all, it only took 5 minutes to get started, which was a bit too fast. He would have to wait until it was almost done, and then add more. Fortunately, his physical attributes now exceeded those of ordinary people. He could recover a lot after resting for a minute. An hour is about to pass. Zhang Ren came over and saw Chenfan's posture. For some reason, he felt a little relieved. He nodded and said, Okay, that's it for the practice of Zhuang Kung Fu. We will continue practicing tomorrow. Yes, Uncle Jong. Chenfan let out a breath. After an hour, he was exhausted. You take a rest first, and we will continue to help you practice archery later. Archery skills are somewhat special. If you don't practice them for a day, you will become rusty. Chenfan nodded. Now the proficiency of basic archery is approaching evening, and it can be upgraded to level 5. By then, the level 3 mounted archery feature can provide a 90% hit rate. If he encounters a wildebeest again, his first arrow will not be easily dodged. As for practicing pile techniques and boxing techniques, it is to improve your strength so that you can draw a heavier bow. At this time, he looked at a figure not far away and asked curiously, Uncle Jong, are Zhao Feng also planning to practice archery? Well, maybe I was stimulated by you. Zhong Ren also looked over, but if he can really master it, it will be a good thing for the village. Chenfan was convinced. The stronger the others in the stockade, the less pressure there is on his shoulders. Of course, the most important thing is to be strong. If nothing happens tomorrow morning, we will continue to hunt out of the village. Chenfan narrowed his eyes slightly. He wanted to go step by step and save some strength to avoid attracting too much attention. But every time you go out, you are struggling on the line of life and death, and you will lose your life if you are not careful. At this time, it is too pedantic to worry about whether your strength will be exposed. So, Tai Chi style, keep adding more points. After consuming a little experience point, the proficiency of Tai Chi style increased by a quarter. Chenfan breathed a sigh of relief. After taking a look at the 6 experience points left, he added 3 more points in one breath. Suddenly, a clear memory appeared in his mind, as if he had been practicing for a month. At the same time, a greater warmth than before flowed throughout the body, as if soaked in a hot spring, and the whole body was warm. Tai Chi style. LV1 0% characteristics, strong level 1. Hey, new features. Chenfan's eyes widened immediately. At a glance, he could guess that this characteristic was used to increase a person's physique. Could it be an upgraded version to strengthen his body? Strong. Every time you upgrade to a level, your physical attributes increase by 2 points. It really is. Chenfan was pleasantly surprised. Looking at it this way, his guess was right. Advanced skills provided higher attribute bonuses, but soon, he couldn't laugh anymore. Because the experience points required for upgrading are more. Even if the same experience value is used in Wuji style, the final attribute bonus provided is a little more. Perhaps there is something else that has not been discovered. He thought to himself. Besides, this is not bad. After he has enough experience points, he will improve the Wuji style and Tai Chi style together. Anyway, the physical attributes the higher the better. Only children make choices, of course adults want them all. There are still 2 points of experience left, so I can't do anything. Let's see how the attributes are. Chenfan was looking forward to it. Realm, none. Level, 3, 0 quarters. Physique, 17.78. Strength, 13.57. Agility, 9.47. Spirit, 6.05. Potential points, 5, 1.1 day. The physical attribute has increased by 4 points, which is the largest improvement among several attributes. Strength and agility have also been improved a little each. There is no change in the mental attributes. Realm is the same. He couldn't help but frown slightly. Could it be that his attributes were not enough? According to the division of the body tempering realm mentioned by Uncle Jong, if the muscle strength reaches 100 kilograms, it is considered the first level of body tempering. Then his strength attribute must be at least 20 points, which is still far behind. Fortunately, there are still 5 potential points that are useless. Let's practice bowing first, and try to upgrade basic archery to level 5 tonight. Chenfan looked at the archery target standing in the distance with determination in his eyes. Time passed by, and everyone knew that Chenfan was now the hope of the entire village. He worked very hard during the sparring. He no longer controlled the speed of his shots, but used his greatest strength to throw the target high into the sky to increase the difficulty. In this way, the proficiency increased faster after being shot, and everyone's physical strength was exhausted faster. After a while, they all fell down from exhaustion. Brother Fan, I'm really sorry. Please wait for us to rest for a while before continuing. Wang Ping panted. Most of the people here have been practicing for a day, and they are already so hungry that their front and heart are close to their backs, not to mention that throwing a target upward is an out-and-out effort. It's okay, you don't have to mind. Chenfan smiled and waved his hand. In almost 2 hours, his proficiency only increased by about 20%. Can he complete the remaining 20%? What if it is upgraded to level 5? Is it okay to use human power again? Or do you have to go hunting to gain more proficiency? Boy, at this moment, Zhang Ren, who was very tired, also said, maybe you can practice rapid fire. Rapid fire. Chenfan was startled. It means shooting the most arrows in the shortest time. Your hit rate at the moving target is pretty good now. If you continue to practice, the improvement will not be obvious. If you can shoot 2 or even 3 arrows in just a few seconds, with just 1 arrow, the hit rate can be greatly improved. Zhang Ren looked at Chenfan and said. Chenfan suddenly understood. When he aimed at the wildebeest in the morning, he shot 3 arrows in a row, which increased his proficiency by almost 10%. If he just hit the moving target, his proficiency would be at most 4%. Uncle Zhang, I understand. He was excited and looked at the archery target not far away. He shot an arrow first and hit the target. However, the increase in proficiency is pitifully low, not even 1,000th. Chenfan, what is this? Zhao Feng looked at Chenfan, who was standing there motionless again, and couldn't help but ask. Zhang Ren shook his head. Probably he's looking for some form. Just keep watching and you'll be fine. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a whoosh, and an arrow flashed past, hitting the target without any surprise. However, at this moment, the second sound of breaking through the air sounded. Then came the third one. Wang Ping and others were shocked to see that Chenfan didn't even care whether the arrow in front hit the target. The moment the arrow left the string, his right hand reached for the arrow basket behind his back, took out the second arrow, and then it's the third branch. But of these 3, all of them hit the mark. Plop, plop, plop. After the third arrow was shot, Chenfan felt his heartbeat beating like a drum, similar to when he shot the wildebeest, but he still had enough energy left. The fourth arrow, at this moment, his face turned red and veins popped up on his forehead. The moment he drew the bow to full, he loosened the bowstring as if he was relieved. Bump, there was a muffled sound, and the fourth arrow also hit the target. Wang Ping and others on the side were completely speechless. They could barely see Chenfan's movements. From when the first arrow was shot to when the fourth arrow hit the bullseye, it took 10 seconds, right? There seems to be none, right? Is this the limit for this kid? Zhang Ren was also stunned. In contrast, although the Wei brothers could draw a bow weighing 100 pounds, they were unable to shoot 4 arrows in a row in such a short period of time. No, 3 arrows were enough. When it comes to archery skills alone, he has already left the Wei brothers far behind. Is this the benefit of improving your physical fitness? Sure enough, even practicing some basic exercises has great benefits. Chenfan's heart was beating wildly and he breathed in the fresh air. He has indeed improved, from 3 consecutive shots to 4 consecutive shots now. Suddenly, he thought of something and hurriedly looked at the skill bar. Basic Archery. LV4, 75.01%. Proficiency is directly increased by 5%. At this moment, a smile appeared on his face. If he aimed at the moving target again, his increased proficiency would be even higher, right? But that's enough. He already knows how to quickly improve his proficiency. Just as a price, after using a rapid fire, not only the entire right arm, but also the entire body seemed to be on fire, and the lungs were burning. Can you still hold on? Zhang Ren came over with a bowl of water and said silently, I'm letting you try it, I'm not asking you to risk your life. Chenfan giggled at him twice and took the bowl. Death-defying. Actually, it's not bad. He can also strengthen his body once. After the strengthening, he can shoot 4 times again, which should not be so uncomfortable. After drinking some water and resting for a while, Chenfan took a deep breath and clicked on the plus sign behind the level after seeing everyone's attention turned away from him. Immediately, a huge stream of heat surged out from the heart, and soon enveloped the whole body, as if the whole person was soaked in a hot spring, and fatigue disappeared instantly. After a few seconds, the heat flow disappeared. Realm, none. Level, 408. Physique, 19.55. Strength, 14.92. Agility, 10.41. Spirit, 6.65. Potential points, 1.1 day. All attributes are increased by 10%. In terms of physical attributes alone, it is close to twice that of ordinary people. The strength attribute is less than 15 points. I want to use a bow with a draw weight of 100 kilograms, but I think too much. I guess an 80-kilogram bow will be a bit too heavy. Agility attributes are average. The spiritual attribute is something that is hard to look at. It's a pity that besides strengthening the body, there is no other way to improve the spirit. Chenfan thought this in his mind and looked at the level. If you want to raise the body enhancement level to 5, you need 8 potential points. If you really eat freely, you can do it in one meal. Not surprisingly, I can achieve this goal today. In short, keep working hard. For the next period of time, he practiced archery alone. After the body was strengthened again, it was indeed a lot stronger. After the second 4 consecutive shots, he was not as exhausted as before, but he still had to rest for about a quarter of an hour. The third time, I needed to rest for half an hour, and I felt a little unable to lift my right arm. Fortunately, in the evening, when the sky was dark, basic archery was finally upgraded. Feeling the refreshing feeling brought by the improvement of the dual attributes of physique and strength, when he was about to look at the attribute panel, a piece of information appeared in his mind. The physical attribute reaches 20 points. Do you want to break through? The probability of breaking through is 100%. What? Chenfan almost screamed, staring at this message with wide eyes. He had some guesses in his mind, but since the probability of a breakthrough was 100%, it would be better to break through first. The moment he chose yes, a crisp sound sounded in his body, as if something had broken. The familiar heat flow from before appeared again, and there was a slight itching sensation wherever it flowed. This gave him the illusion that he was repairing his body. After a few breaths, the heat slowly receded, and Chenfan hurriedly looked at the attribute panel. Realm, Tempered Body Level 1. Level, 408. Physique, 22.6. Strength, 17.51. Agility, 11.45. Spirit, 7.32. Potential points, 3 points 1 day. Sure enough, it's just as I predicted. Chenfan slowly exhaled and a smile appeared on his face. He broke through. From an ordinary person, he has become a warrior of the first level of body tempering. Although his strength has not reached 20 points, he can use a bow with a draw strength of 80 kilograms without any problem, and can also draw a bow with a draw strength of 100 kilograms. The benefit of the breakthrough can be inferred from the increase in mental attributes, which is also a 10% increase in all attributes. It is equivalent to strengthening the body for an additional time. It does not need to consume potential points. The requirement is that a certain value reaches a threshold, and once it is reached, it can break through. If you want to break through to the second level of body tempering, you probably need to have a physical attribute of 30 points, right? For the third level, it's 40. With Chenfan's background, it doesn't look like much. If you work hard, you should be able to achieve it soon. Once you reach the third level of body tempering and want to enter the meat refining realm, I'm afraid it won't be that simple, right? Maybe it requires dual attributes to reach a threshold. Forget it, it's still too early to think about this, just take your time. After the breakthrough, Chenfan's confidence greatly increased. One night passed quickly. Chenfan still used a 60-pound bow to shoot continuously. When basic archer was level 4, the proficiency increased by 4 consecutive shots could reach 5%, but now, it can barely even reach 3%. During this period, he tried a 5-shot shoot, and the effect was good. The proficiency increased by nearly 4%, but the price was naturally exhaustion. Before going back, he specially brought the bow with a draw weight of 80 kilograms. Jong was only slightly surprised. After all, in his opinion, with Chenfan's current strength, using an 80-kilogram bow should not be a problem. Not big. Compared with a 60-pound bow, the latter has a maximum range of more than 200 meters and an effective range of about 80 meters. It will undoubtedly be a big help if you really encounter a difficult beast. Zhao Feng, on the other hand, felt the pressure doubled. The next morning, everyone in the hunting team gathered at the entrance of the village again. Because there were more prey yesterday, Chen Guodong let everyone rest for 2 more hours. Sure enough, everyone's face was red, refreshed, and their eyes were full of fighting spirit. Chenfan was also among the team, listening to the praises one after another around him. He was a little embarrassed, but more afraid. After all, he was a warrior of the first level of body tempering, and he was in his own village. He had some strength, but compared with the people in Jaia Jaaba, he was too inconspicuous. You have to work harder. Everyone walked out of the camp one after another, and the suspension bridge behind them slowly rose. Snapped. At this moment, the bald man slapped Chenfan on the shoulder and said strangely, "What are you thinking about? Why do you look so absent-minded? Yes, Xiaofan, you must be feeling unwell. It's okay to just stay in the village and rest for a day. You can still eat yesterday's prey for a few days. That's right, it's not too late to go back now." Several people on the side were also concerned. Chen Guodong also looked over, his eyes a little nervous. "No way, I was just thinking, when I encounter prey, would it be better to use the bow in my hand or the bow on my back?" Chenfan came to his senses and then said with a smile. "Okay, you kid, can you even shoot an 80-pound bow?" The bald man looked at the long bow Chenfan was carrying and said in shock. If it were him, he would have to use all his strength to draw the bow. "Actually, I haven't tried it yet, but if I bring it with me, it might come in handy," Chenfan explained. "That's right, every inch is longer and stronger. When the Wei brothers are here, they can hit their prey from a distance of 150 meters. The bald man sighed. "They used a bow weighing 100 pounds, right? That's not something ordinary people can draw. HMPH, what's the point? I believe that Xiaofan will be able to pull away one day." "Yes, that's right, Xiaofan is the marksman in our village. He hits every target with every shot, ha ha ha." Everyone was talking and laughing, but what they didn't expect was that after walking for less than 10 minutes, a group of people walked diagonally opposite. This group of people had a lot of harvest, carrying on their hands and shoulders, and dragging 200 to 300 kilograms on each side. Large prey animals are also talking and laughing. The atmosphere in the team instantly became quiet. Chenfan's heart skipped a beat and he couldn't help but hold his longbow tightly. Could it be that these people were from Lijajai? However, when he thought about it carefully, Chenfan felt that he was worrying too much. First of all, I and others had just left the stronghold not long ago, and their hands were empty. Even if the people on the other side were really people from the Li family stronghold, there was nothing to worry about, not to mention that this group of people had obviously returned with a full load. Secondly, the number of people is wrong. There are too many people in this group. There are almost 30 people, and the number of people in Lijajai is only about 13 or 4. Of course, the most important thing was that he saw the Wei brothers among the crowd. Obviously, the hunting team in front of them probably came from Jaia Jaaba. "He's from Jaia Jaaba," a voice sounded in the team. "Look, Tiangong Tianyuan and the others are there. It seems like their harvest is very rich. After all, this is Jaia Jaaba, a large village with more than 1,000 people. It is not comparable to ordinary small camps." Everyone whispered, "Wait until they pass first." Chen Guodong whispered, with unconcealable sadness in his eyes. The bald man patted his shoulder and sighed. People in Jaia Jaaba also saw Chen Guodong and others 100 meters away, whispering to each other. The distance was too far and they couldn't hear clearly. The Wei brothers were also among the crowd. At this moment, Wei Tianyuan trotted towards the front of the team and said something. Then, what Chen Guodong and others never expected was that he actually ran towards here. Not only that, he also held a knife in his right hand. A wasteland rabbit weighing 20 or 30 kilograms. Chenfan was also stunned and thought of a possibility. Could it be? In just half a minute, Wei Tianyuan was already in front of everyone. "Brother Guodong, this is for you." After saying that, he smiled and put the wasteland rabbit in his hand into Chen Guodong's hand. The latter subconsciously took it, and immediately pushed it back as if he was electrocuted, saying, "Tianyuan, what are you doing? Take it back quickly, I can't keep this rabbit." "Yes, Tianyuan, do you know what you are doing? What will they think if they see it?" Lu Yang, who had always been smiling and heartless, now also had a serious face. In the distance, the people in Jaia Jaaba stopped and looked this way. Don't worry, Wei Tianyuan said nonchalantly. I asked Brother Zhao just now and he had no objection. Brother Guodong, please accept it quickly. I don't have much time. As he said that, he saw Chenfan holding a long bow in his hand and a quiver on his back. His heart felt sour and he almost burst into tears. What a pitiful child, he has to go out hunting with the people in the village before he reaches adulthood. If he encounters danger, he didn't dare to think about it anymore. Tianyuan. Chen Guodong was about to speak, but the other party waved his hand and said, okay, that's it. I'm going back too. I can't keep Big Brother and the others waiting for too long. Brother Guodong and everyone, please take care. After saying that, he turned around and left quickly. Brother Zhao, thank you. He deliberately ran to the front of the team first and thanked a tall, muscular man. Thank me for what? The strong man sneered. Anyway, the things you send out will be deducted from your brother's shares when they return to the castle. Yes, I know. Wei Tianyuan smiled warmly at the other party, and then returned to the end of the team. Cut. The strong man sneered, with a look of disdain. Others took this scene seriously and either gloated, sneered, or shook their heads and sighed. This newcomer actually made such a request in front of so many people. How could Zhao San refuse to agree? Otherwise, wouldn't it appear that he is narrow-minded? As for what it means to be pitiful, it's simply funny. There are so many pitiful people in the world, many of them homeless and eaten by ferocious beasts. Are they the only ones pitiful in Chenjajai? Isn't your family pitiful? When I first arrived, I was low-key and self-righteous. Elder brother, Wei Tianyuan returned to Wei Tiangong's side and smiled. The latter shook his head slightly and sighed inwardly. My younger brother is still too impulsive. If he wants to do something like this, he should at least discuss it with himself. But everything had happened, and it was too late to say anything now. What's more, he also saw Chenfan in the crowd, and his nose was sore. This child was going to go out to hunt. If the two brothers had not left, wouldn't this have happened? Forget it, years of feelings are there, you can't just see them and be indifferent, right? As for the consequences, just make up for it slowly. Watching Jaia Jaaba's team leave in a mighty manner, Chen Guodong and his party were still in a state of confusion until the last figure disappeared. So, Tianyuan came here specially to deliver prey to us, but he still can't let us go. Someone choked. Yeah, he must think that we are having a hard time now. This is not necessarily a good thing. Chen Guodong sighed. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Yes, although they are not short of a wasteland rabbit at the moment, who would have too much for such a free bargain. But if they were from Jaia Jaaba, Wei Tianyuan would be a little unreasonable to do this. No matter how generous you are, you will feel unhappy inside. Chenfan also frowned. As a result, it will be more difficult for them to gain a foothold in Jaia Jaaba, right? The more powerful you are, the more you will be jealous when dating. Uncle Tianyuan really shouldn't do this. Blame me. Chen Guodong sighed and looked at the wasteland rabbit in his arms. I should have caught up with him then. It's useless, the bald man shook his head. The moment he ran towards here, things have already happened. If you return the prey, the result will be the same. I just hope we worry too much. Ah, at this moment, someone woke up from a dream, glanced at Chenfan and said, we should have told them about Xiaofan just now. The village is not like it used to be. Everyone has food. If they can come back. Halfway through his words, he couldn't speak anymore. Yes, what if I tell them about this? Jaia Jaaba is not a toilet. You can come and leave whenever you want. Well, the matter has come to an end, and further discussion will not help. I just hope that today's matter can be reduced to a major matter. If one day they are really willing to come back, I will welcome them with both hands. Chen Guodong said. Me too, me too, everyone agreed. Because of this incident, the originally cheerful atmosphere became dull. However, the more irritating thing is yet to come. I don't know whether it's because the people from Jaia Jaaba have done a sweep, or it's just bad luck. After walking for more than an hour, I still found nothing, and the trap was also empty. The group was sweating profusely and their mouths were dry. We can't go any further. Suddenly, the bald man stopped and looked at the wilderness ahead, where the weeds were more luxuriant and there were even more trees that were rarely seen before. From time to time, there were black shadows lingering in the sky, looking at this place. We have walked almost 10 miles, and there is a danger zone ahead. Danger zone. This was the first time Chenfan heard this name. The bald man turned around, glanced at Chenfan and said, "Do you still remember the armored rhinoceros we bumped into on the way yesterday? Those of that level are not uncommon here. They are mainly carnivorous intermediate-level ferocious beasts, and their numbers are also small. The surge is so great that, if you are not lucky, you can even encounter high-level ferocious beasts." High-level ferocious beast. Chenfan took a breath of air. The so-called high-level ferocious beasts are usually 3 or 4 meters in size, and there are even larger ones. They are often capable of destroying a small human camp and are extremely aggressive. I heard that there were many small villages in the past where all the dead and injured were killed and injured overnight. They were targeted by high-level ferocious beasts and directly broke down the walls at night to enter. Go back and look elsewhere. Chen Guodong glanced ahead with lingering fear. These experiences were all exchanged for human lives. The team headed southeast. Isn't it a bit boring? The bald man smiled at Chenfan. Chenfan nodded and wiped the sweat from his head. He felt that his entire back was soaked with sweat and it was sticky to his body, making him extremely uncomfortable. That's the normal state of being out hunting. The bald man consoled him. In the past, after a long journey for a day, I couldn't even see the shadow of a prey. Sometimes I did, but the prey disappeared in a flash. Yes, it was like yesterday. You were lucky. Of course, Xiaofan, your archery skills are also accurate. Otherwise, it would be useless to see it. A middle-aged man with a big nose next to him said with a bitter smile. So that's it. Chenfan also showed a dumbfounded expression. It seemed that he had overestimated his expectations and turned against customers. He made improving his proficiency in basic archery the main purpose of hunting. I hope I can gain something today. He sighed in his heart and glanced behind him unconsciously. There should be a lot of prey in the place that Uncle Lu and the others called the danger zone, right? It's just that with my current strength, it's still too dangerous. Next. Everyone said one sentence after another. I don't know how much time passed, but a few small black spots appeared 200 to 300 meters ahead. Chenfan also saw it. Everyone was immediately refreshed and hurriedly stepped closer. When they got closer to more than 100 meters, strange expressions appeared on everyone's faces. I saw 2 gray steppenwolves attacking a lone bull. The bull seemed to be underage and was not much bigger than the steppenwolf. It had a pair of arm-sized horns and was charging left and right. I want to kill one of them. However, the 2 steppenwolves cooperated tacitly. One was responsible for attracting attention, while the other made a sneak attack and bit each other's soft lower abdomen. When Chenfan and the others arrived, the intestines of this wild bull calf were leaking out and blood was scattered all over the floor. It was obvious that it was about to run out of strength. At this moment, the 2 attacking steppenwolves also noticed the group of people and immediately ran away vigilantly, their eyes fixed on the prey and the people. The wild bull was swaying in place. Everyone looked at each other, as if saying, "Is there such a good thing? You're not dreaming, are you?" How to say? The bald man coughed twice and said, "Should we accept this wild bull? Or should we accept it?" Ha ha ha. The rest of the group laughed. Do you still need to say it? Of course I accepted it. This is what God gave us. That's right, maybe you can't bear it when you see that we have come so far and found nothing. My dear, this bull, although it is not yet an adult, must weigh 200 kilograms, right? Beef. 10 years ago, I couldn't even afford it. Ha ha ha, I really have to thank those 2 beasts for working for us. Chen Guodong was a little quiet, frowning. Dad, what's wrong? Chenfan was quite happy at first, but when he saw the former's expression, he asked doubtfully. Nothing. Chen Guodong shook his head, looked at the bull that was about to bleed to death soon, and asked, Xiaofan, give it a good time. Chenfan nodded, surrounded by everyone, walked about 30 or 40 meters, and shot an arrow. The wild bull was completely unaware of the movement around it, and fell down as if aiming at a fixed target. He took a look at the basic archery proficiency level, which was less than 1%, which was a bit low. But the good news is that after giving 5 experience points, the total is 8 points. Thinking in his mind, he looked far away and found that the 2 steppenwolves were still staring at this place in his group. The distance is a bit far, 150 meters away. These two beasts are so smart. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. Even with the 80-pound bow on his back, it would be difficult to hit a target from 100 meters away, and the lethality of a hit would be limited. The others were not idle either and started to dismember the prey and prepare to drag it away. Chen Guodong's brows were furrowed. He also noticed that the two steppenwolves had been watching here. Obviously, they were unwilling to be robbed of their prey. This steppenwolf is a ferocious beast with a strong desire for revenge, and I'm afraid it won't give up easily. That's enough hunting for today, he said. I always have a bad premonition. Besides, if we can really drag this prey back to the village, the harvest will be very rich. Everyone agreed. I picked this up for free, so what else is there to be dissatisfied with? On the wasteland, the team walked back. 100 or 200 meters later, two gray figures followed each other closely, like candy that couldn't be shaken off. Chenfan also tried to take the initiative to attack, but as soon as he chased after him, the two steppenwolves ran back. When he went back, they came back. This is to say that the enemy is retreating while I advance, and the enemy advances while I retreat. You understand? Oh shit, Chenfan cursed in his heart. Why are these fools so cunning? He even doubted whether he had spiritual intelligence. The shooting range is still not far enough. If you use a bow with a draw weight of 100 kilograms, you can shoot their dog heads with one arrow from 200 meters away. Guodong. The bald man's face also became serious. He glanced at the two steppenwolves. Do you think these two beasts are gathering their companions? Probably. Chen Guodong nodded solemnly. This is what I was worried about at the beginning. The steppenwolf likes to go out in groups. It's a bit strange that these two are alone. Looking at them now, they are reluctant to give up. Most of them are in wait for the big troops to come. What should I do? Upon hearing this, everyone else in the team panicked. Not to mention 2 or 3, even 4 or 5 steppenwolves, they didn't take them lightly. They had weapons in hand and a numerical advantage, so they would only suffer a few injuries. But if a large group comes, more than 10 or 20, it will be dangerous. It's obviously not worth taking such a big risk for a prey. It's so easy to say, and the benefits are so easy to get, but who is willing to let them go easily? For a moment, everyone's eyes fell on Chen Guodong. It was time to test the team leader. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.